The massive ion storm strikes without warning, disabling the UN diplomatic shuttle in an instant. Ambassador Russell Holmes grips his seat as alarms blare and emergency lights flash. The pilot's voice crackles over the intercom. "Brace for impact." The shuttle plummets through Beta Z Prime's icy atmosphere, metal shrieking as it tears against the frozen landscape. Holmes's head slams against the bulkhead, and darkness engulfs him. Hours later, Queen Selene of the Betazoids stands on her palace balcony, her telepathic senses stretched to their limits. The distress beacon from the human shuttle pulses in her mind like a fading heartbeat. She turns to her chief advisor. "Prepare the search and rescue team. I will lead them myself." As night falls, temperatures plummet to lethal levels. Selene's team discovers the mangled wreckage of the shuttle, but Ambassador Holmes is nowhere to be found. Faint boot prints in the snow lead away from the crash site. Selene closes her eyes, focusing her psychic abilities. A weak flicker of human consciousness brushes against her mind. "This way," she commands, pointing towards a distant ice formation. The team trudges through deepening snow, wind howling around them. As they approach a vast ice cave, an ominous rumble echoes from above. Selene barely has time to shout a warning before an avalanche crashes down, sealing the cave entrance and separating her from her team. Alone in the darkness, Selene ignites a light stick. Its pale glow reveals Ambassador Holmes' unconscious form, his skin blue with hypothermia. She rushes to his side, checking for vital signs. His pulse is weak, erratic. Selene knows there's only one way to save him. The ancient Betazoid survival technique of Kalara, sharing body heat through direct skin contact. It's a deeply intimate act, typically reserved for bonded mates. But without it, the ambassador will surely die. With steady hands, Selene removes Holmes's freezing, wet garments. She strips off her own clothing, suppressing a shiver as the icy air bites at her exposed skin. Carefully, she lowers herself onto Holmes's body, wrapping her arms and legs around him. As their bare skin touches, an unexpected surge of sensation floods Selene's body and mind. Physical warmth blossoms between them, but something else, something her telepathic species has never experienced, ignites within her. Her breath catches, heart racing as unfamiliar emotions and desires course through her veins. Meanwhile, high above Beta Z Prime, tensions escalate. The human and Betazoid fleets face off in a tense orbital standoff. Each side accuses the other of sabotaging the diplomatic mission, unaware of the true architect of this crisis. Hidden beneath a sophisticated cloaking device, a Romulan vessel observes the unfolding chaos. Its crew exchanges satisfied glances. Their plan to disrupt relations between humans and Betazoids has succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. As accusations fly and weapon systems power up, war seems all but inevitable. Back in the icy cavern, Selene clings to the unconscious human, her mind reeling from the intense connection. She doesn't understand these new sensations, but she knows one thing with certainty: she never wants them to end. A faint groan escaped Ambassador Holmes's lips as consciousness slowly returned. His body felt heavy, encased in warmth that seemed to penetrate his very bones. As his eyes fluttered open, they locked onto a pair of mesmerizing, dark orbs mere inches from his face. Queen Selene watched intently as awareness dawned in the human's eyes. She felt his sudden spike of confusion and embarrassment through their skin-to-skin contact, his emotions reverberating through her mind with startling clarity. "Ambassador," she said softly, her breath ghosting across his face, "please remain still. You were suffering from severe hypothermia. The Kalara technique was necessary to save your life." Holmes blinked, his mind sluggishly processing her words. He became acutely aware of their state of undress. The soft curves of her body pressed firmly against his. A mix of embarrassment and something else, something electric and enticing, coursed through him. I understand," he managed, his voice hoarse. "Thank you, Your Majesty." As they lay there, bodies entwined in the dim glow of the light stick, an unexpected sensation began to build between them. It started as a gentle hum, a whisper of connection that quickly grew into a roaring tide of shared consciousness. Holmes gasped as unfamiliar emotions and fragmented thoughts flooded his mind. He saw flashes of Celine's memories, her coronation, diplomatic meetings, moments of solitude in the palace gardens. The intimacy of it was overwhelming, unlike anything he had ever experienced. Celine, too, found herself lost in the labyrinth of Holmes's psyche. The complexity of human emotions washed over her, raw and unfiltered. She marveled at the depth of his feelings, so different from the carefully controlled betazoid mindset she was accustomed to. This connection, Holmes breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. Is this normal for your people? Celine shook her head slightly, careful not to break their physical contact. No, Ambassador. This level of psychic bonding is unprecedented. It seems the combination of Kalara and our unique physiologies has created something entirely new. As they grappled with the intensity of their mental link, the world outside their icy cocoon continued to teeter on the brink of conflict. High above Beta Z Prime, Admiral Zhang paced the bridge of his flagship, his patience wearing thin. Commander Thalos, he barked into the communication channel, every moment we delay puts Ambassador Holmes at greater risk. We must take action now. On the Betazoid command ship, High Commander Thalos remained outwardly calm, though his crew could sense his growing agitation. Admiral, I understand your concern, but we cannot risk further destabilizing the cave system. Our rescue teams are working as quickly as safety allows. As the two fleets jockeyed for position, a third unseen player watched with growing satisfaction. On the bridge of the cloaked Romulan vessel, Commander Vertax studied the tactical display with a predatory grin. Helm, move us into position near the human fleet's starboard flank, he ordered. Weapons, prepare a low-yield photon torpedo. When I give the command, fire it at the lead Betazoid ship, but make it appear to come from the humans. Back in the ice cave, Holmes and Celine found themselves pulled from their psychic exploration by a sudden drop in temperature. The ambassador shivered involuntarily, his teeth beginning to chatter. The storm must be intensifying, Celine observed, her brow furrowing with concern. We need to find a way to insulate ourselves better. Reluctantly, they separated, both immediately feeling the loss of warmth and connection. They quickly dressed in what remained of their clothing, which had partially dried thanks to their shared body heat. There, Holmes pointed to a narrow crevice in the cave wall. It looks like it might lead to a more sheltered area. Together, they carefully made their way through the tight passage, emerging into a smaller chamber, partially protected from the howling winds outside. As they gathered what meager resources they could find, chunks of ice, remnants of Holmes's shuttle gear, to construct a makeshift shelter, neither could ignore the lingering echo of their psychic bond. Ambassador, Celine began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant, what we experienced, it could have profound implications for our peoples. Holmes nodded, his diplomatic mind already racing with possibilities. A deeper understanding between humans and betazoids could revolutionize our alliance. But, he paused, meeting her gaze, I can't help but feel this goes beyond mere political considerations. Celine felt a flutter in her chest, an unfamiliar warmth spreading through her despite the frigid air. Indeed, Ambassador, I find myself curious about these human emotions I've glimpsed in your mind. As they worked side by side, their hands occasionally brushing, sending jolts of sensation through both of them, the line between diplomatic allies and something far more intimate began to blur. The weight of their responsibilities warred with the undeniable pull they felt towards each other. Outside, the Betazoid rescue team redoubled their efforts to clear the avalanche, unaware of the growing tensions in orbit and the Romulan threat lurking in the shadows. As Holmes and Celine huddled together in their improvised shelter, both knew that whatever the outcome of this crisis, nothing would ever be the same between their two species, or between them personally. As Holmes and Celine huddled together in their improvised shelter, a faint warmth emanated from deeper within the cave, barely perceptible against the biting cold. Holmes furrowed his brow, his diplomatic instincts piqued by this anomaly. Your Majesty, he said, gesturing towards the cave's depths, do you feel that? Celine nodded, her eyes closing briefly as she extended her telepathic senses. There's something different about that area. We should investigate." Carefully, they made their way through the winding passages, the temperature gradually rising with each step. The narrow tunnel suddenly opened into a vast chamber, bathed in a soft, pulsating light that seemed to emanate from the very walls. Holmes gasped, his eyes wide as he took in the sight. Ancient Betazoid artifacts lined natural stone shelves, their intricate designs catching the light. The walls themselves were covered in elaborate carvings, depicting scenes of Betazoid history and what appeared to be intimate bonding rituals. This is incredible," Holmes breathed, his voice filled with awe. "What is this place?" Celine's fingers traced the carvings, her expression a mix of wonder and recognition. This is a sacred bonding site. Our ancestors used these caves for their most important union ceremonies." She turned to Holmes, her dark eyes shimmering with emotion. "I had no idea such a place still existed." As they explored the chamber, the warmth from geothermal activity beneath their feet seeped into their bodies, alleviating the bone-deep chill they had endured. The immediate threat of hypothermia receded, allowing them to focus on the marvels surrounding them. Holmes picked up a small, crystalline object, its facets catching the light. As his fingers closed around it, a jolt of energy surged through him. He stumbled, nearly dropping the artifact. "Ambassador!" Celine exclaimed, reaching out to steady him. The moment their skin made contact, the psychic bond they had experienced earlier roared back to life with startling intensity. Images flooded their minds, memories, emotions, and sensations intertwining in a dizzying kaleidoscope. Holmes saw himself through Celine's eyes, felt her curiosity about human emotions, her growing fascination with him. Celine, in turn, experienced the depth of Holmes's respect for Betazoid culture, his genuine desire for lasting peace between their peoples, and an undercurrent of attraction he had been trying to suppress. They stood frozen, lost in the torrent of shared consciousness. The artifacts around them began to glow more brightly, responding to the intense psychic energy emanating from the pair. The cave itself seemed to pulse with an ancient power, amplifying their connection. Holmes felt his heart racing, his body responding to the intimate nature of their mental link. He could sense Celine's own physical reactions, her breath coming in short gasps, her skin flushed with warmth that had nothing to do with the geothermal heat. "Celine," he whispered, using her name for the first time. I've never felt anything like this." She nodded, her eyes locked on his. "Nor have I. Our minds, our very essences, they're intertwining in a way I didn't know was possible." Their faces drew closer, the pull between them nearly irresistible. Just as their lips were about to meet, a muffled voice echoed through the cave. "Your Majesty, can you hear us?" The sudden intrusion jolted them back to reality. Celine blinked, struggling to focus on the distant voice of her rescue team. Yes, she called out, her voice shaky. "We're here. We're safe." As Celine attempted to communicate with her team, Holmes became aware of a growing sense of unease. Through their enhanced connection, he could feel a shadow of tension and fear from beyond the planet's surface. Something was very wrong. "Celine," he said urgently, "I think there's trouble in orbit. Our fleets, they're on the brink of conflict." Her eyes widened as she too became aware of the crisis unfolding above them. "We have to do something," she said, her voice filled with commitment. "We can't let this escalate into war." As they hurriedly gathered their thoughts, preparing to face the challenges ahead, neither could ignore the lingering effects of their profound connection. The taste of unfulfilled passion hung in the air, mingling with the weight of their newfound responsibility. The sound of shifting rocks echoed through the chamber as the rescue team made progress on clearing the cave entrance. Holmes and Celine exchanged a loaded glance, knowing that once that barrier was breached, they would be thrust back into a world of diplomatic complexities and interstellar tensions. Yet as they stood amidst the ancient artifacts, their bodies still humming with the energy of their shared experience, both the ambassador and the queen knew that everything had changed. The challenge that lay ahead was not just to prevent a war, but to navigate the uncharted territory of their own hearts. Profound connection between them. The challenge that lay ahead was not just to prevent a war, but to navigate the uncharted territory of their own newfound bond. The sound of shifting rocks grew louder, and a beam of light pierced through the darkness. Holmes and Celine turned towards the entrance, their hearts racing with anticipation and a touch of regret for the interrupted moment. "Your Majesty, Ambassador," Captain Zorn's voice echoed through the chamber as he and his team pushed through the last of the debris. The Betazoid officer stumbled forward, his eyes wide with shock as he took in the scene before him. The rescue team froze, their minds reeling from the intense psychic energy permeating the air. Several of them clutched their heads, overwhelmed by the residual connection between the Queen and the Ambassador. Celine stepped forward, her regal composure returning despite her disheveled appearance. She projected a wave of calm towards her people, her enhanced abilities allowing her to soothe their discomfort. "Captain Zoran," she said, her voice steady and authoritative, "we have a critical situation that requires immediate action." Holmes joined her, his diplomatic instincts kicking in. "There's a conflict brewing in orbit," he explained quickly. "We need to establish communication with both fleets immediately." Captain Zorn shook his head, trying to clear the lingering effects of the psychic surge. "Your Majesty, Ambassador, we've brought communication equipment, but the cave's mineral composition is interfering with the signal." Holmes's eyes darted around the chamber, taking in the glowing artifacts that surrounded them. An idea formed in his mind, born from the intimate knowledge he now shared with Celine. "These artifacts," he said, gesturing to the ancient relics, "they amplified our psychic connection. Could we use them to broadcast a message to the fleets?" Celine's eyes widened as she grasped the implications of Holmes' suggestion. "It's unprecedented, but it might work." She turned to Captain Zoran. "We need to lower the planet's defensive shields momentarily. Send a coded message to High Commander Thelos with these instructions." As Zoran hurried to comply, Holmes and Celine moved to the center of the chamber. The rescue team formed a protective circle around them, instinctively lending their mental energy to the effort. "Are you ready?" Holmes asked softly, extending his hands to Celine. She nodded, intertwining her fingers with his. "Together," she whispered. As their hands joined, the artifacts around them pulsed with renewed energy. The air crackled with psychic power, building to a crescendo that made the very walls of the cave vibrate. In orbit, Admiral Zhang watched with growing alarm as the Betazoid shields flickered and dropped. "All ships, prepare to—" His order was cut short as a massive wave of psychic energy washed over the fleet. On every ship, human and Betazoid alike, crews staggered under the onslaught of shared consciousness. Images flooded their minds. The icy cave, the ancient chamber, the profound connection between Holmes and Celine. Emotions not their own coursed through them. Understanding, unity, and an overwhelming desire for peace. On the bridge of his flagship, Zhang gripped his command chair, his eyes unfocused as he experienced flashes of Holmes's memories. He saw diplomatic meetings, felt the ambassador's genuine respect for Betazoid culture, and understood the depth of his commitment to peace. Across the vacuum of space, High Commander Thelos experienced a similar epiphany. Through Celine's eyes, he saw the complexity of human emotions, the strength of their convictions, and the potential for a truly symbiotic relationship between their peoples. As the psychic wave began to subside, a new image crystallized in the minds of both fleet commanders. A cloaked Romulan vessel, poised to ignite the very conflict they had been manipulated into. "All ships, hold position," Zhang barked, his mind clear once more. "Scan for cloaked vessels in Sector 7 Alpha." Thelos, reaching the same conclusion, ordered his fleet to power down weapons and reinforce their sensors. "Locate that Romulan ship," he commanded. In the cave, Holmes and Celine collapsed to the ground, their bodies spent from the immense psychic effort. Captain Zorn rushed to their side, medical scanner in hand. "They're alive," he reported to his team, "but their neural patterns are intertwined. We need to get them to the Royal Medical Facility immediately." As the rescue team prepared stretchers for the unconscious pair, Zoran turned to his second-in-command. "Secure these artifacts. Document everything. This chamber may hold the key to a new era of interstellar relations." The team worked quickly, carefully packing the ancient relics while others prepped Holmes and Celine for transport. As they began their journey back to the Betazoid capital, none of them fully grasped the magnitude of what had transpired. In orbit, the human and Betazoid fleets now worked in concert, their sensors sweeping space for signs of the Romulan intruder. The once imminent conflict had transformed into an impromptu joint operation, the first of its kind between the two species. As Holmes and Celine were loaded onto a medical shuttle, their hands remained clasped, a faint glow still emanating from their joined fingers. Whatever the future held, it was clear that the relationship between humans and Betazoids would never be the same. The shuttle lifted off, carrying its precious cargo towards an uncertain future. In its wake, the ancient chamber stood silent once more, its secrets only partially revealed, waiting for the day when they might be fully understood. The shuttle touched down on the landing pad of the Betazoid Royal Palace, its engines humming to a stop as medical personnel rushed forward. The unconscious forms of Ambassador Holmes and Queen Celine were carefully transferred to hovering stretchers, their hands still clasped tightly together. As they were wheeled through the ornate corridors, Dr. Ilera, the chief medical officer, hurried alongside them, her eyes fixed on the readouts of her medical tricorder. Her brow furrowed as she observed the unprecedented synchronization of their vital signs. "Prepare the specialized telepathic monitoring chamber," she ordered, her voice calm but urgent. "And alert the xenobiology team. We're dealing with something entirely new here." The medical bay doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a room filled with advanced equipment designed specifically for monitoring and supporting telepathic activity. As Holmes and Celine were gently transferred to adjacent beds, a faint, pulsating glow began to emanate from their bodies. Dr. Ilera's eyes widened. "Fascinating," she murmured, adjusting the sensors to better capture the phenomenon. "This energy signature, it's reminiscent of the ancient bonding rituals I've read about in historical texts." As the medical team worked tirelessly to stabilize and monitor the ambassador and queen, events were unfolding rapidly in orbit above Betazed Prime. Admiral Zhang stood on the bridge of his flagship, his posture tense as he coordinated with High Commander Thalos of the Betazoid fleet. "All ships, maintain formation," Zhang commanded, his voice steady despite the lingering effects of the psychic event. "Sensors at maximum. That Romulan vessel can't have gone far." Thalos's face appeared on the display, his expression a mirror of Zhang's commitment. "We've detected a faint energy signature in Sector 9 Delta. Moving to intercept." As the combined human and Betazoid fleets closed in on their target, the Romulan commander Vertak paced the bridge of his cloaked vessel. "Initiate emergency protocol Sigma-9, he growled. "Destroy all evidence. We cannot allow ourselves to be captured." Back at the Royal Palace, Dr. Zara Hill arrived with her team of human and Betazoid scientists. The xenobiologist's eyes gleamed with excitement as she was briefed on the situation. "This is unprecedented," she breathed, reviewing the initial data. "The neural synchronization between Ambassador Holmes and Queen Celine, it's beyond anything we've ever seen in interspecies interaction." As Dr. Hill and her team set up their equipment, Holmes and Celine lay motionless on their beds, their minds deeply entangled in a shared dreamscape. Within this virtual realm, memories and experiences flowed between them like currents in a vast ocean. Holmes found himself walking through the halls of a Betazoid temple, its architecture impossibly intricate and beautiful. Beside him, Celine marveled at the sight of Earth's Grand Canyon, its vast expanse stretching before them under an alien sky. "This is extraordinary," Celine's voice echoed in their shared consciousness. "I can feel your memories, your experiences. They're becoming a part of me." Holmes nodded, his form shimmering with a mix of human and Betazoid characteristics. "And I can sense the depths of your people's history, the richness of your culture. It's overwhelming." As they explored this merged reality, new neural pathways were forming in their physical brains, enhancing their cognitive abilities and empathic range in ways that would have profound implications upon their awakening. In the physical world, political tensions were rising rapidly. The Betazoid High Council had convened an emergency session, their voices echoing through the Grand Chamber as they debated the unprecedented situation. "We cannot allow this to continue," Councillor Varon argued, his face flushed with agitation. The implications of such a deep connection between our queen and a human ambassador, it's too dangerous. Counselor Tella rose, her voice calm but firm. We must not act hastily. This could be the key to a new era of understanding between our peoples. Severing their connection without fully understanding it could have disastrous consequences. As the debate raged on, Dr. Alara noticed a sudden spike in neural activity from both Holmes and Selene. Their breathing quickened, heartbeats accelerating in perfect synchronization. They're coming out of it, she called out, her team rushing to prepare for their awakening. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the palace. Security Chief Loran's voice crackled over the comm system. Intruder alert! Multiple hostiles detected near the medical bay. All personnel, initiate lockdown procedures. In the corridors outside, a group of Romulan operatives moved with deadly precision, their advanced cloaking technology allowing them to slip past the palace's initial defenses. Their leader, a grim-faced warrior named Tavek, checked his weapon as they approached the medical bay doors. Remember, he hissed to his team, the targets must not be allowed to awaken. Eliminate them quickly and without mercy. As the Romulans prepared to breach the final barrier, Holmes and Selene's eyes snapped open in perfect unison. They sat up, their movements mirroring each other with uncanny precision. Through their enhanced empathic abilities, they sensed the approaching danger with crystal clarity. Dr. Alara stared in amazement as the ambassador and queen rose from their beds, moving with a fluid grace that spoke of their newfound connection. Holmes and Selene turned to face the doors, their minds working as one to assess the situation and formulate a response. Doctor, they spoke in unison, their voices blending in an otherworldly harmony. Evacuate your team. We'll handle this. As the medical staff hurried to follow their instructions, Holmes and Selene assumed defensive stances, their bodies glowing with the same energy that had pulsed through the ancient artifacts in the cave. The doors to the medical bay began to glow red as the Romulan intruders attempted to burn through. Holmes and Selene exchanged a glance, volumes of information passing between them in an instant. They were one mind and two bodies, their combined knowledge and skills making them a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The doors exploded inward, and the first Romulan operative burst through the opening, disruptor raised. Holmes and Selene moved as one, their actions perfectly coordinated as they prepared to face this new threat head-on. The fate of two worlds now hung in the balance, with the newly forged bond between human and Betazoid standing as the last line of defense against those who would see them torn apart. As the Romulan strike team poured into the room, the true test of this unprecedented connection was about to begin. As the Romulan strike team poured into the room, Holmes and Selene moved in perfect synchronization, their bodies flowing like water around the incoming attacks. The first operative lunged forward, disruptor raised, but found himself grasping at empty air as the duo sidestepped with preternatural grace. Holmes' fist connected with the Romulan solar plexus, driving the breath from his lungs, while Selene simultaneously swept the attacker's legs out from under him. The operative crashed to the ground, his weapon clattering across the polished floor. Security breach in medical bay. Dr. Ilara's voice rang out as she activated the palace's emergency protocols. Klaxons blared throughout the facility, and the medical bay doors slammed shut, sealing the confrontation within. The confined space quickly became a whirlwind of action as Holmes and Selene faced off against the remaining Romulans. Their movements were a mesmerizing dance of offense and defense, each anticipating the other's actions without a word spoken between them. A Romulan operative swung a vicious blow towards Selene's head, but Holmes was already there, deflecting the strike with his forearm. In the same fluid motion, Selene ducked under Holmes's arm and delivered a precise strike to the attacker's throat, leaving him gasping for air. As the battle raged on, Dr. Alara and her team huddled behind overturned medical equipment, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. The chief medical officer's gaze darted between the fight and her medical tricorder, which was registering increasingly unusual readings from Holmes and Selene. "This is impossible," she whispered, adjusting the device's settings to ensure it wasn't malfunctioning. "Their neural patterns are perfectly aligned, and their biochemistry is evolving?" The air in the medical bay began to shimmer with an otherworldly energy as Holmes and Celine's skin took on a faint, pulsating glow. The luminescence intensified with each synchronized heartbeat, casting eerie shadows across the room. The lead Romulan operative, Varel, narrowed his eyes as he assessed the situation. His gaze landed on the ancient artifact from the cave, which now sat on a nearby examination table, its surface rippling with the same energy that emanated from Holmes and Celine. "The artifact!" Varel barked to his remaining team members. "Destroy it!" Time seemed to slow as Varel lunged for the artifact, his disruptor aimed and primed to fire. Holmes and Celine turned as one, their hands reaching out in perfect unison. Their fingers closed around the artifact just as Varel's beam struck its surface. A blinding flash of light erupted from the point of impact, engulfing the entire medical bay in a sea of white. When the glare subsided, an eerie stillness had fallen over the room. The Romulan operatives stood frozen in place, their bodies rigid as statues. Dr. Alara and her medical team found themselves similarly immobilized, unable to move or speak. Only Holmes and Celine remained mobile, their bodies now emitting a soft, continuous glow. The artifact in their hands had liquefied, its essence seeming to seep into their skin like quicksilver. Their eyes met, a wordless understanding passing between them as they felt their connection deepen even further. The silence was shattered by the sound of the medical bay doors being forced open. Captain Zoran burst in, leading a team of Betazoid security forces. They quickly moved to secure the paralyzed Romulan operatives, their movements cautious as they took in the bizarre scene before them. "Ambassador Holmes, Your Majesty," Zoran called out, his voice tinged with concern. "Are you all right?" Holmes and Celine turned to face the captain, their movements still in perfect sync. When they spoke, their voices overlapped in an unsettling harmony. "We are more than all right, Captain. We are becoming something new." As the security team worked to restrain the Romulans, Dr. Alara finally found herself able to move. She rushed to Holmes and Celine, her medical tricorder whirring as she scanned their altered forms. "This is unprecedented," she murmured, her eyes widening as she interpreted the readings. "Your cellular structures are harmonizing, adapting to each other on a level I've never seen before. It's as if your very atoms are trying to merge." Dr. Zara Hill, who had been observing from the sidelines, stepped forward with a look of both excitement and apprehension. "We need to stabilize them before the process goes too far. If we don't act quickly, we may lose them both to this fusion." The xenobiologist turned to her team, her voice urgent. "Prepare the modified psychic dampening field. We'll create a controlled environment to help them regain their individual identities without severing their connection entirely." As the scientific team scrambled to set up the necessary equipment, the doors to the medical bay slid open once more. Admiral Zhang and High Commander Thalos strode in, their faces grim with the weight of recent events. "The Romulan threat in orbit has been neutralized," Zhang announced, his eyes never leaving the glowing forms of Holmes and Selena. "But it seems we face an even greater challenge here." Thalos nodded, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. "We must decide quickly. Do we allow this merger to continue, or do we attempt to separate them?" Dr. Hill's voice cut through the tension. "The dampening field is ready. We need to act now if we're going to stabilize their condition." With a nod from both Zhang and Thalos, Dr. Hill activated the field. A low hum filled the air as the invisible energy enveloped Holmes and Celine. Their glowing forms began to solidify, the blurring at their edges receding slowly. Yet even as their individual shapes became more defined, their hands remained firmly clasped, fingers intertwined and pulsing with residual energy from the artifact. The room fell into a tense silence as everyone waited to see the outcome of this unprecedented intervention. Holmes and Celine's eyes, which had been unfocused and distant, suddenly sharpened. They blinked in unison, then turned to face each other. A silent communication seemed to pass between them, their faces reflecting a complex mix of emotions. Slowly they began to speak, their voices no longer perfectly synchronized but still carrying echoes of their shared experience. "We are," Holmes began. "Still here," Celine finished, her grip on Holmes's hand tightening slightly. Dr. Alara stepped forward, her medical tricorder scanning furiously. Their vital signs are stabilizing, but the connection remains. It's unlike anything I've ever seen in interspecies interactions. As the gravity of the situation settled over the room, Admiral Zhang and High Commander Thelos exchanged troubled glances. The implications of this event were far-reaching, with potential consequences for both human and Betazoid societies. Dr. Hill cleared her throat, drawing everyone's attention. We've managed to halt the merger, but we're in uncharted territory here. We need to proceed carefully to understand the full extent of their transformation and its long-term effects. The tension in the room was palpable as all eyes turned to Holmes and Celine. The fate of two worlds now rested in their joined hands, their unprecedented connection representing both incredible potential and unknown risks. As the dampening field continued to hum softly in the background, the next steps in this interstellar drama remained uncertain, with the possibility of either a new era of understanding or an unforeseen crisis looming on the horizon. As the team of scientists and medical professionals continued their work, the air in the medical bay grew thick with tension and anticipation. Suddenly, the dampening field surrounding Holmes and Celine pulsed with renewed energy. Their intertwined hands began to glow brighter, and a visible tendril of energy formed between them, connecting their bodies like an otherworldly umbilical cord. The room fell silent as everyone watched, transfixed by the bizarre spectacle unfolding before them. Without warning, Holmes and Celine's eyes widened in unison, their mouths opening in silent screams. Dr. Alara's medical tricorder shrieked with alarm as their vital signs spiked erratically. "They're experiencing some kind of neurological cascade," Dr. Alara shouted, rushing to their side. "We need to stabilize them immediately." Dr. Hill joined her colleague, adjusting the settings on the dampening field. "Their minds are being overwhelmed by the psychic exchange. We need to create a buffer to slow the flow of information." As the medical team worked furiously to stabilize the ambassador and queen, Holmes and Celine remained locked in their silent struggle. Their faces contorted with a mix of pain and wonder as a flood of shared memories and emotions washed over them. In their minds, they saw flashes of each other's lives. Holmes' childhood on Earth, his years at the Diplomatic Academy, his first interstellar mission, Celine's royal upbringing on Betazid, her coronation, the weight of responsibility she carried for her people. The experiences blurred together, becoming a tapestry of two lives intertwined. After several tense minutes, the energy tendril connecting them began to fade, and their physical forms started to separate. Holmes and Celine collapsed onto their respective beds, their chests heaving as they gasped for air. Dr. Alara scanned them both, her brow furrowed with concern. Their vital signs are stabilizing, but their brainwave patterns are still synchronizing. It's as if their minds are operating on the same frequency. As Holmes and Celine slowly regained their composure, they turned to face each other. Their eyes met, and a look of understanding passed between them. "Can you hear me?" Celine's voice echoed in Holmes's mind, clear as a bell despite her lips remaining still. Holmes blinked in surprise, then concentrated. "Yes," he thought back, "as clearly as if you were speaking aloud." Their silent exchange did not go unnoticed. Captain Zorn stepped forward, his expression grim. "Ambassador, Your Majesty, are you able to communicate telepathically?" Holmes nodded, his voice hoarse as he spoke aloud. "Yes, Captain. It seems our minds remain linked, even though our bodies have separated." Zorn's frown deepened. "This presents a significant security concern. Until we can fully assess the extent of your connection, I'm afraid I'll have to implement strict protocols to isolate you both from sensitive areas of the palace." As Zorn began issuing orders to his security team, Admiral Zhang and High Commander Thalos huddled in the corner of the medical bay, speaking in hushed tones. "We need to convene an emergency meeting with the Betazoid High Council," Thalos said, his voice tight with worry. "The implications of this human-Betazoid bond could be far-reaching." Zhang nodded in agreement. "I'll contact Earth immediately. We'll need additional support to navigate this diplomatic minefield." As the room buzzed with activity, Holmes and Celine remained focused on each other, exploring the depths of their new connection. They found they could share not just thoughts, but sensations and emotions as well. The intimacy of the experience was both exhilarating and overwhelming. There's so much information, Celine thought to Holmes, her mental voice tinged with awe. I can see glimpses of Romulan operations, strategic plans. How much did we absorb during our merged state? Holmes concentrated, sifting through the flood of new memories and knowledge. It's difficult to process it all, but you're right. We may have gained critical intelligence that could be vital to both our worlds. Their silent conversation was interrupted by Dr. Hill, who approached with a data pad in hand. Ambassador, Your Majesty, we'd like to run a series of tests to explore the extent of your new abilities. With your permission, of course. As Holmes and Celine agreed to the tests, the medical bay doors slid open once more. A group of Betazoid royal advisors entered, their faces etched with concern as they took in the scene before them. One of the advisors, an older Betazoid woman with silver hair, stepped forward. Your Majesty, we must speak with you immediately regarding your condition. There are concerns about your ability to rule objectively, given your deep connection to the human ambassador. Celine's face hardened, her mental voice reflecting her displeasure as she communicated silently with Holmes. It begins already. They fear what they don't understand. Holmes sent back a wave of reassurance. We'll face this together. Our bond may be unprecedented, but it could also be the key to a new era of cooperation between our people. As the political storm began to brew around them, Holmes and Celine found themselves at the center of a situation with far-reaching consequences for both their worlds. The true test of their newfound connection was just beginning, and the challenges ahead would push them to the limits of their combined abilities. In a high-security detention area deep within the palace, the Romulan operative Varl sat motionless in his cell, his face a mask of calm. Unbeknownst to his captors, a tiny device hidden in a false tooth had just finished transmitting a burst of encrypted data. As the signal was detected and jammed, a faint smile played across Varel's lips. The message had been sent, and soon the true game would begin. And the true mastermind behind the operation would soon reveal their hand. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows of the secure medical wing, Holmes and Celine stirred from their shared dreamscape. Their eyes opened in perfect synchronization, a testament to the deepening bond that had formed between them during the night. The connection that had begun as a startling side effect of the artifact's energy had evolved into something far more profound and intimate. Dr. Alara, who had been monitoring their vital signs throughout the night, noticed the change immediately. She rushed to their bedsides, her medical tricorder whirring as she began a new series of scans. How are you feeling? She asked, her voice a mixture of professional concern and scientific curiosity. Holmes and Celine exchanged a glance, their silent communication now as natural as breathing. We feel whole, Holmes answered for both of them, his voice carrying an undercurrent of awe. Before Dr. Alara could inquire further, the doors to the medical bay slid open, admitting a flurry of activity. Dr. Olivia Takahashi strode in, flanked by her specialized team from Earth. Their arrival had been anticipated, but the speed with which they had mobilized spoke volumes about the gravity of the situation. Dr. Takahashi, a petite woman with a commanding presence, wasted no time. Ambassador Holmes, Queen Celine, I'm Dr. Takahashi. We've brought some advanced equipment to study your connection. With your permission, we'd like to begin immediately. As the Earth team began setting up their equipment, a palpable tension filled the air. Betazoid officials hovered at the edges of the room, their faces etched with concern and barely concealed suspicion. The human presence on their world had always been a delicate matter, and now it seemed to be intruding into the very core of their society. Admiral Zhang and High Commander Thelos entered the medical bay, their expressions grim. They pulled Dr. Ilara and Dr. Takahashi aside, speaking in hushed tones. Holmes and Celine, their senses heightened by their bond, caught fragments of the conversation. Political situation deteriorating, Zhang murmured. Counselor Vex moving to challenge, Thelos added, his voice tight with worry. Holmes turned to Celine, his mind reaching out to hers. It seems our connection has sparked a political firestorm. Celine's mental response was tinged with frustration and persistence. Vex and his faction have always resisted closer ties with Earth. They'll use any excuse to undermine our alliance. Their silent exchange was interrupted as Dr. Takahashi approached, a series of neural interfaces in her hands. We'd like to begin with a series of controlled experiments, she explained. These will help us understand the full extent of your shared abilities. As the day progressed, Holmes and Celine found themselves subjected to an increasingly complex battery of tests. They demonstrated abilities that left even the seasoned scientists baffled. Holmes effortlessly performed intricate betazoid meditation techniques he had never studied, while Celine rattled off Earth languages with native fluency. The most startling revelation came during a physical agility test. As Holmes navigated a holographic obstacle course, Celine gasped, her body tensing and relaxing in perfect sync with his movements. "I can feel everything he's feeling," she explained, her voice filled with wonder. "Every step, every breath. It's as if I'm the one running the course." Dr. Takahashi's eyes widened at this development. She furiously typed notes into her datapad, her mind already racing with the implications of this level of physical synchronization. As the test continued, Holmes and Celine found themselves struggling with another unexpected side effect of their bond, an intense physical attraction that seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour. During a brief moment alone, as the scientists recalibrated their equipment, they found themselves drawn together, their faces mere inches apart. "Celine," Holmes whispered, his voice husky with desire. "This feeling—" "I know," she replied, her mental voice echoing the longing in his own mind. "It's overwhelming." Just as their lips were about to meet, the doors slid open, admitting a visibly agitated Captain Zorn. The moment shattered, Holmes and Celine quickly stepped apart, their faces flushed. "Ambassador, Your Majesty," Zorn said, his voice tense. "We've detected unusual energy signatures on the planet's surface. There's a possibility our security has been breached." As alarms began to blare throughout the palace, Holmes and Celine shared a look of sudden, inexplicable dread. Through their bond, they sensed a looming threat, fragmented images of cloaked figures moving through the shadows of the capital city, their intentions dark and dangerous. "Romulans," they said in unison, their voices filled with certainty. The room erupted into chaos as security forces mobilized. Admiral Zhang and High Commander Thalos began issuing rapid-fire orders, preparing for a potential evacuation. Amidst the commotion, Dr. Takahashi approached Holmes and Celine, her face pale but determined. "I've made a breakthrough in my analysis," she said urgently. "The artifact's energy has created a form of quantum entanglement between your minds. Attempting to sever this connection could have catastrophic consequences for both of you." Before they could fully process this information, the doors to the medical bay burst open. Counselor Vex stormed in, flanked by a group of loyal supporters. His face was contorted with righteous anger as he pointed an accusatory finger at Celine. "Your Majesty," he spat, the title sounding like an insult on his lips. "Your ability to rule has been compromised by this unnatural bond with the human ambassador. For the good of Beta Z, you must step down immediately." As tensions in the room reached a boiling point, Holmes and Celine stood united, their hands clasped tightly together. Through their bond, they began to formulate a plan, one that would require all of their combined knowledge, skills, and newfound abilities. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance as the Romulan threat closed in and political chaos threatened to tear Beta Z apart. For Holmes and Celine, the true test of their unprecedented connection was about to begin. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. In that moment of tense quiet, Holmes and Celine's eyes met. A spark of understanding passed between them, and suddenly their senses came alive with an overwhelming flood of information. Images flashed through their minds. Cloaked figures moving stealthily through the streets of the capital, advanced weaponry concealed beneath flowing robes, and a burning tenacity to breach the palace defenses. "We can sense them," Celine said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Romulans, they're here." Holmes nodded, his expression grim. "Not just here. They're close. Very close." Admiral Zhang stepped forward, his hand instinctively moving to the phaser at his hip. How can you be certain? Our bond, Holmes explained, his words coming rapidly as he processed the influx of information. It's enhanced our abilities beyond anything we've experienced before. We can perceive their movements, their intentions. Their plan, Celine finished, her eyes widening with sudden realization. They're after us, Admiral. The Romulans want to capture us, to study our connection. High Commander Thalos immediately began issuing orders to his security teams, his voice sharp with urgency. Lock down all access points. I want every sensor recalibrated to detect even the slightest anomaly in the cloaking fields. As the room erupted into a flurry of activity, Holmes and Celine found themselves at the center of a rapidly forming defensive strategy. Their unique abilities made them an invaluable asset in tracking the Romulan threat, but also placed them squarely in the crosshairs of the enemy. We need to move you to a secure location, Captain Zorn insisted, already ushering them toward the door. But Holmes and Celine stood their ground, a shared perseverance flowing between them through their mental link. No, Holmes said firmly, we can help. Our abilities give us an advantage. We can coordinate your defense efforts, guide your teams to intercept the Romulans before they breach the palace. Celine nodded in agreement, her regal bearing commanding attention even in the midst of chaos. And we must address the political situation as well. Councillor Vex and his supporters cannot be allowed to destabilize our government at such a critical moment. Admiral Zhang and High Commander Thalos exchanged a look of concern. Your Majesty, Thalos began, with all due respect, your safety must be our primary concern. Our safety is inextricably linked to the safety of both our worlds, Celine countered. We cannot hide while our people face this threat. As if to underscore her words, a sudden tremor shook the building. Alarms blared throughout the complex, signaling that the outer defenses had been breached. Holmes and Celine's hands found each other, their fingers intertwining as they closed their eyes in concentration. Through their bond, they reached out, their enhanced senses probing the chaos unfolding around them. The extraction team, Holmes said, his voice tight with focused strain. They've split into 3 groups. The main force is creating a diversion at the south entrance, while 2 smaller teams are attempting to infiltrate through the service tunnels and the roof access points. Celine's eyes snapped open, locking onto Admiral Zhang. Admiral, your security teams on level 3 are about to be ambushed. Reroute them immediately. Zhang didn't hesitate, barking orders into his communicator. As he did, Holmes and Celine continued to relay critical information, their shared consciousness becoming a real-time tactical network that gave the defenders a crucial edge. But even as they helped coordinate the defense, Holmes and Celine became acutely aware of the toll their enhanced abilities were taking on their bodies. A dull ache began to throb behind their eyes and beads of sweat formed on their brows. Dr. Alara noticed their discomfort immediately, rushing to their side with her medical tricorder. Your neural activity is off the charts, she said, her voice tight with concern. If you continue at this pace, you risk severe neurological damage. Before they could respond, the doors to the medical bay burst open once more. Councillor Vex stormed in, flanked by a group of agitated supporters. This has gone far enough, he shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at Celine. Your Majesty, you are clearly compromised. For the safety of our people, you must step down immediately. The tension in the room reached a breaking point as security personnel moved to intercept Vex and his group. But Holmes and Celine, their minds still linked, saw an opportunity amidst the chaos. Wait, Selena commanded, her voice carrying the full weight of her authority. Councillor Vex, members of the High Council, we understand your concerns, but we ask you to witness something extraordinary. With a shared nod, Holmes and Celine stepped forward, their linked hands raised before them. As they concentrated, a soft glow began to emanate from their skin, pulsing in perfect synchronization. What you see before you, Holmes began, his voice steady despite the strain, is not a threat to Betazid or to Earth. It is the potential for a new era of cooperation and understanding between our peoples. Celine continued seamlessly, her words flowing from the same shared consciousness. We propose to demonstrate the true power of our bond. not just to you, but to all those who would seek to divide us. As the Romulan assault intensified outside and political tensions threatened to boil over within, Holmes and Selene prepared to take their greatest risk yet. They would attempt to create a temporary telepathic network, linking the minds of key human and Betazoid leaders. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance as they began to channel the mysterious energy that bound them together. The glow around them intensified, filling the room with a pulsating light that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. In that moment of blinding radiance, as friends and foes alike stood transfixed, the true test of Holmes and Selene's unprecedented connection was about to begin. The lines between individual minds began to blur, and the boundaries of what was possible were about to be rewritten. Shattered. In that moment of blinding radiance, Holmes and Selene channeled the mysterious energy binding them, pushing their abilities to the limit. A wave of psychic energy pulsed outward, enveloping the room's occupants. Gasps of surprise echoed as the minds of key human and Betazoid leaders suddenly interconnected, forming an unprecedented telepathic network. Admiral Zhang blinked rapidly, his eyes widening as he experienced the sensation of shared consciousness. "This is extraordinary," he whispered, his thoughts resonating through the mental link. High Commander Thelos, equally astounded, nodded in agreement. "I can perceive everyone's tactical assessments simultaneously. The strategic possibilities are immense." As the network stabilized, Holmes and Selene's bodies began to emit an intensifying bioluminescent glow, pulsating in perfect synchronization with their shared heartbeat. The artifact's energy, now fully integrated into their physiology, manifested in unexpected ways. Dr. Alara rushed forward, her medical tricorder whirring. "Their neural activity is off the charts," she reported, her voice tight with concern. "The strain on their systems is severe." Despite the growing discomfort, Holmes and Selene remained focused, using their enhanced abilities to coordinate the defense efforts. Through the telepathic network, they relayed crucial information to the security teams. "Romulan extraction team breaching the South Corridor," Holmes communicated mentally, his thoughts crisp and clear to all connected. "Two squads, heavily armed." Selene's mind added to the tactical picture. "They're using advanced cloaking technology. Adjust your sensors to the following frequency." As the battle raged through the palace corridors, the combined human Betazoid security forces moved with unprecedented coordination. Every action was precise, every maneuver perfectly timed. The Romulan team, led by Commander Karras, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Karras snarled in frustration as another of his carefully planned assaults was thwarted. "How are they anticipating our every move?" he hissed to his second-in-command. In the command center, Counselor Vex watched the holographic battle projections with growing amazement. The effectiveness of the Holmes-Selene link was undeniable, forcing him to reconsider his earlier opposition. "Perhaps," he mused aloud, "we have been too hasty in our judgment." As the conflict intensified, so did the strain on Holmes and Selene. Their skin had become hypersensitive, every touch sending waves of sensation through both of them simultaneously. Sweat beaded on their foreheads as they struggled to maintain the telepathic network. Dr. Takahashi monitored their vital signs with growing alarm. "Their neural patterns are becoming dangerously unstable," she reported to Admiral Zhang. "If we don't act soon, their individual consciousnesses could merge permanently." Zhang's face tightened with concern. "Can we safely sever the link?" "Unknown," Takahashi replied. "The artifact's energy is too deeply integrated into their systems. Attempting to separate them could cause irreparable damage." As they grappled with this dilemma, an alert blared through the complex. Admiral Zhang's eyes widened as he processed the information through the telepathic network. "The Romulans have breached the inner defenses. They're heading straight for this section." High Commander Thelos quickly formulated a plan, sharing it instantly through the mental link. "We need to level the playing field. A coordinated electromagnetic pulse could disable their advanced technology." "But it would also affect our own systems," Zhang countered, his thoughts tinged with concern. "A calculated risk we must take," Thelos insisted. With a shared nod of agreement, the order was given. The pulse rippled through the palace, plunging sections into darkness. The hum of technology fell silent, replaced by the sounds of confusion and struggle. In the sudden blackness, Commander Karras saw his opportunity. Using the chaos as cover, he and a small team fought their way toward the secure wing where Holmes and Selene were located. The linked pair sensed the approaching danger, but their weakened state left them vulnerable. As Karras burst into the room, phaser raised, Holmes and Selene found themselves cornered. At last, Karras growled, a triumphant gleam in his eyes, the source of this unprecedented power. But as he moved to capture them, the artifact's energy surged within Holmes and Selene. Their separate abilities began to merge in ways they had never experienced before. Holmes felt Selene's advanced telepathic powers flowing through him, while Selene accessed Holmes' vast repository of diplomatic and strategic knowledge. This sudden evolution caught Karras off guard. Before he could react, Holmes and Selene combined their newly merged abilities, channeling them into a powerful psychic blast. The energy wave rippled outward, invisible but potent. Karras and his team crumpled to the ground, overwhelmed by the sheer force of the psychic attack. As the last Romulan fell, Holmes and Selene collapsed, their bodies still glowing and intertwined. The strain had been too much, pushing them beyond their limits. Dr. Alara and her medical team rushed forward, but their efforts to stabilize the pair proved futile. Traditional treatments had no effect on the artifact's energy now coursing through their systems. As security forces secured the Romulan prisoners, attention turned to Holmes and Selene's deteriorating condition. Their bodies lay motionless, the bioluminescent glow pulsing weakly. Dr. Takahashi stepped forward, her face set with willpower. "I have a theory," she announced to the gathered leaders. "If we can harness the artifact's energy in a controlled manner, we might be able to stabilize their neural patterns." "What are the risks?" Admiral Zhang asked, his voice tight with concern. "Significant," Takahashi admitted. "This procedure is entirely untested. It could permanently alter their brain chemistry, or worse." As the implications of this high-stakes gamble sank in, the room fell into a tense silence. The fate of Holmes and Selene hung in the balance, along with the future of human betazoid relations. Dr. Alara looked up from her medical scans, her expression grim. "Whatever we decide, we must act quickly. Their condition is deteriorating rapidly." With the immediate Romulan threat neutralized but a new crisis looming, the leaders of Earth and Beta Z faced a momentous decision. The next few hours would determine not only the fate of two individuals, but potentially the course of a galactic history. As the tension in the room reached a fever pitch, Dr. Takahashi's voice cut through the silence. "We need to act now," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "Every second we delay puts Ambassador Holmes and Queen Selene at greater risk." Admiral Zhang nodded grimly. "Proceed with the procedure, Doctor. We'll deal with the political fallout later." As Dr. Takahashi and her team rushed to prepare their equipment, a sudden surge of energy from Holmes and Selene's intertwined forms sent ripples of distortion through the air. Medical instruments near the pair began to malfunction, their displays flickering and warping. Dr. Alara's eyes widened as she studied her tricorder. "This is impossible," she breathed. "The artifact's energy is creating a localized temporal distortion field around them." Dr. Hill, who had been observing the phenomenon with keen interest, stepped forward. "It's a defense mechanism," she declared, her mind racing. "The artifact is trying to protect them by altering the flow of time in their immediate vicinity." The implications of this development sent shockwaves through the assembled leaders. High Commander Thelos frowned, his brow furrowed in concern. "How can we treat them if we can't even approach without experiencing temporal effects?" Dr. Hill's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "The psychic dampening field," she said, turning to her Betazoid colleagues. "If we modify it, we might be able to create a stable bubble around Holmes and Selene. It would allow us to work without temporal interference." As the scientists hurried to implement Dr. Hill's plan, Admiral Zhang found himself besieged by urgent communications from Earth. The Admiral's face grew increasingly grim as he listened to the demands of his superiors. "Earth's leadership is demanding assurances," Zhang reported, his voice tight. "They want guarantees that this procedure won't compromise Ambassador Holmes's loyalty or his ability to represent human interests. High Commander Thelos scoffed. As if we would allow such a thing. The Betazoid High Council is equally concerned. They're insisting on sending a delegation to observe the procedure. Counselor Vex, who had been watching the proceedings with calculated interest, saw his opportunity. He stepped forward, his voice smooth and conciliatory. Perhaps I can be of assistance, he offered. A joint oversight committee with representatives from both Earth and Beta Z could monitor the procedure and its aftermath. It would ensure transparency and allay fears on both sides. The suggestion was met with cautious approval, easing some of the immediate tension even as it added another layer of complexity to an already delicate situation. As the political maneuvering continued, Dr. Takahashi and her team worked feverishly to modify the psychic dampening field. The air around Holmes and Celine shimmered and pulsed, the temporal distortions growing more pronounced with each passing moment. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the complex. Admiral Zhang's hand flew to his communicator, his expression darkening as he received the report. The Romulan prisoners are being interrogated, he announced, and what they're revealing is troubling. All eyes turned to the Admiral as he continued. The Tal Shiar believes that the Holmes-Celine bond is the key to unlocking ancient preserver technology. If they're right, the implications could shift the balance of power in the entire quadrant. The revelation sent a ripple of shock through the room. Dr. Alara, who had been closely monitoring Holmes and Celine's vital signs, suddenly gasped. Their physiologies, she exclaimed, staring at her readings in disbelief. They're changing, aligning into some kind of human betazoid hybrid at the cellular level. Dr. Takahashi's team redoubled their efforts, knowing that time was running out. With a final adjustment, the modified psychic dampening field sprang to life, creating a stable zone around the unconscious pair. As the medical team moved in, they were met with an astonishing sight. Holmes and Celine's bodies were physically merging, their limbs intertwining in ways that defied natural law. Dr. Takahashi steeled herself, activating the specially designed neural interface. The moment the interface connected, a surge of psychic energy exploded outward. Every mind in the room was suddenly, violently linked to Holmes and Celine's shared consciousness. Flashes of memories, emotions, and glimpses of advanced preserver knowledge flooded their minds. As quickly as it began, the connection severed, leaving the observers reeling. Dr. Takahashi shook her head to clear it, refocusing on the critical task at hand. Just as the procedure reached its most delicate phase, the sound of weapons fire echoed through the palace corridors. Admiral Zhang's communicator crackled to life, delivering dire news. The Romulans, Zhang growled, his face a mask of fury. They've regrouped and launched another assault. They're using some kind of advanced technology. Our defenses are barely slowing them down. High Commander Thelos was already moving towards the door. We need to coordinate our forces, he said urgently. Doctor, you must complete the procedure. We'll hold off the Romulans as long as we can. As Zhang and Thelos rushed to organize the defense, Dr. Takahashi focused all her concentration on the neural interface. Holmes and Celine's merged consciousness flowed through the device, a swirling maelstrom of human and betazoid thought patterns. Outside, the sounds of battle grew closer. The fate of two individuals, two worlds, and perhaps the entire quadrant hung in the balance as Dr. Takahashi worked to stabilize and separate the unprecedented psychic bond. In the midst of the chaos, Holmes and Celine's intertwined forms began to pulse with an otherworldly light. Whether it heralded success or disaster remained to be seen, as the conflict within and without the palace walls reached its crescendo. Climax. The air crackled with tension as Dr. Takahashi's fingers flew across the neural interface controls, her face a mask of intense concentration. Suddenly, a triumphant spark lit her eyes. I've isolated their individual neural patterns, she announced, her voice tight with controlled excitement. Initiating separation sequence now. As her team worked feverishly within the temporal bubble, the rest of the room seemed to hold its breath. Admiral Zhang and High Commander Thelos exchanged a brief glance before turning their attention back to the ongoing Romulan assault. The moment Dr. Takahashi activated the separation protocol, a blinding flash of energy erupted from Holmes and Celine's intertwined forms. The temporal distortion field surrounding them pulsed and expanded rapidly, engulfing the entire medical bay in a shimmering dome of warped spacetime. Outside the bubble, Admiral Zhang stumbled back, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. "What's happening?" he demanded, voice raised to be heard over the distant sounds of battle. Dr. Ilara, monitoring the situation from beyond the field's boundary, studied her instruments with wide eyes. "The temporal distortion is intensifying," she reported. "Time within the bubble is accelerating exponentially compared to our frame of reference." Inside the temporal bubble, Dr. Takahashi and her team found themselves in a pocket of accelerated time. Minutes stretched into hours as they worked tirelessly to stabilize Holmes and Celine's condition. The pair's bodies, once impossibly fused, began to separate under the influence of the carefully calibrated neural interface. Dr. Hill, her brow furrowed in concentration, called out to Takahashi. "Their physiologies are still changing. Look at this." As Holmes and Celine's forms drifted apart, a glowing cord of bioluminescent energy remained stubbornly connected between their midsections. Dr. Takahashi's eyes narrowed as she analyzed the unexpected development. "We can't sever it completely," she concluded after several attempts. "The artifact's energy is too deeply integrated. We'll have to stabilize the link instead." Outside the bubble, the battle raged on. Admiral Zhang coordinated with High Commander Thalos, their forces struggling against the Romulans' advanced weaponry. The attackers pushed deeper into the palace complex, their reverse-engineered preserver technology proving devastatingly effective. "We need to buy more time," Zhang growled, his uniform singed from a near miss. "Our standard defenses are barely slowing them down." Counselor Vex, who had been observing the chaos with calculating eyes, stepped forward. "I have an idea," he announced, his voice cutting through the din of battle. "The palace's central power core. If we can reroute its energy to the defense systems, we might stand a chance." Thalos regarded the counselor warily but nodded his assent. "Take a team and go. We'll hold them off as long as we can." As Vex departed on his mission, the temporal bubble surrounding the medical bay suddenly collapsed. Dr. Takahashi and her team blinked in disorientation as they found themselves back in sync with the rest of the palace. On the medical beds before them, Holmes and Selene stirred, their eyes fluttering open. The ambassador and the queen sat up slowly, their movements perfectly mirrored. The glowing cord connecting them pulsed with impossibly strong power. As awareness returned to their eyes, they shared a look of profound understanding. "We can help," they spoke in unison, their voices overlapping in an otherworldly harmony. Despite protests from the medical team, Holmes and Selene rose to their feet. Energy crackled around them as they tapped into their newly stabilized abilities. Holmes reached out with his mind, establishing a telepathic link with the palace defenders. Celine's strategic mind whirred into action, analyzing the Romulan attack patterns with inhuman speed. They moved as one towards the central command center, the bioluminescent cords stretching between them. Personnel they passed stared in awe at the transformed pair. Upon reaching the command center, they immediately took control of the situation. "The Romulans are using a layered attack formation," Selene announced, her voice ringing with authority. "But there's a weakness in their technology." Holmes nodded, continuing her thoughts seamlessly. "A flaw in the reverse-engineered preserver systems. We can exploit it, but it will require perfect coordination between our forces." As they outlined their plan, Counselor Vex's voice crackled over the comm system. "Power rerouted to defense systems," he reported, a note of pride in his voice. "Shields at maximum capacity." The surge of energy, combined with the tactical advantage provided by Holmes and Selene's link, began to turn the tide. Romulan ships faltered under the renewed defensive barrage. On the ground, the telepathic network established by Holmes allowed for unprecedented coordination among the defenders. The Romulan commander, realizing his advantage was slipping away, made a bold strategy. "All forces converge on the central command center," he ordered. "Capture the hybrids at all costs." As the final Romulan push began, Holmes and Selene stood at the heart of the command center. Their linked bodies glowed with increasing intensity as they channeled more power to coordinate the defense. Sweat beaded on their brows, the strain of maintaining their abilities evident in their tightened expressions. "They're breaking through the outer defenses," Admiral Zhang reported, his voice grim. Holmes and Celine shared a look of commitment. We have one last option, Celine began. A localized electromagnetic pulse, Holmes finished. It could disable their weapons, but the risk to your physiology is significant, Dr. Takahashi warned, having followed them to the command center. The linked pair nodded in understanding. As the sounds of battle grew closer, they clasped hands, their bodies beginning to glow with otherworldly energy. The bioluminescent cord between them pulsed rapidly, channeling power for their bold strategy. Brace for impact, Holmes and Celine called out in unison, their voices rising above the chaos. Energy built around them, the air itself seeming to vibrate with potential. As the first Romulan soldiers breached the command center doors, Holmes and Celine prepared to unleash their electromagnetic pulse. The fate of the palace, and perhaps the entire quadrant, hung in the balance as they tapped into the full power of their hybrid physiology. Physiology. The command center fell silent as all eyes turned to the linked pair, their bodies pulsing with an otherworldly glow. As Holmes and Celine channeled the immense power building within them, the bioluminescent cord connecting their midsections began to pulsate rapidly, their faces contorted with visible strain, sweat beading on their brows as they pushed their newly stabilized hybrid physiology to its limits. Dr. Takahashi took an instinctive step forward, her medical instincts screaming at her to intervene. Ambassador, Your Majesty, the risk to your bodies. We understand the risk, Holmes and Celine replied in unison, their voices overlapping in an eerie harmony. But we have no choice. The first wave of Romulan soldiers burst through the command center doors, their weapons raised and ready to fire. Time seemed to slow as Holmes and Celine locked eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. With a shared nod, they unleashed the electromagnetic pulse. A blinding flash of blue-white energy erupted from their linked bodies, expanding outward in a visible wave. The pulse swept through the command center with surprising speed, washing over friend and foe alike. Romulan weapons sputtered and died, their communications devices falling silent. The attackers stumbled, disoriented by the sudden loss of their advanced technology. But the pulse didn't discriminate. The command center's holographic displays flickered and went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in as the main power grid failed, bathing the room in an eerie red glow. Throughout the palace, systems shorted out, leaving entire sections in darkness. As the energy wave dissipated, Holmes and Celine collapsed to the floor, their bodies entwined in the bioluminescent cord between them, flickering weakly. Dr. Takahashi and her team rushed to their side, medical tricorders whirring as they assessed the damage. Admiral Zhang wasted no time. Now's our chance. All units, push them back. Human and Betazoid defenders surged forward, their weapons still functional thanks to more robust shielding. The disoriented Romulans found themselves outmatched, forced to rely on hand-to-hand combat against the organized counterattack. High Commander Thelos coordinated with Zhang, their earlier mistrust forgotten in the heat of battle. Section 3 is clear, he reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. Moving to secure the East Wing. As the fighting spread throughout the palace, Dr. Hill noticed something strange happening to the few functional displays. Ancient star charts and technological schematics flickered to life, fragments of preserver knowledge dispersed by the electromagnetic pulse. We need to contain this data, she called out, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and concern. It could be invaluable, but in the wrong hands. She didn't need to finish the thought. Admiral Zhang nodded grimly. Take whatever personnel you need. Secure that information. As Dr. Hill assembled her team, Counselor Vex approached Zhang. Admiral, let me help. I know this palace's systems better than anyone. I can get our defenses back online. Zhang studied the counselor for a moment, then nodded. Do it. We need every advantage we can get. While the battle raged on, Holmes and Celine began to stir. As they regained consciousness, they found themselves in a shared mental space, a remnant of their earlier merger. Thoughts and sensations flowed between them, unrestricted by physical distance. The artifact's energy, Celine's voice echoed in their shared consciousness. It's changed us. Holmes nodded, his mental projection overlapping with hers. We've become something new, neither fully human nor betazoid. Their eyes snapped open in the physical world, a new understanding dawning. Dr. Takahashi leaned over them, her face etched with concern. "Ambassador, Your Majesty, how do you feel?" They sat up in perfect synchronization, their movements fluid despite their recent ordeal. "We're fine," they answered together, then paused, seemingly surprised by their own voices. Before Dr. Takahashi could respond, Admiral Zhang's voice cut through the din of battle. "The Romulans are regrouping. They're after the preserver data." Holmes and Selene stood, their bodies moving with newfound grace. The bioluminescent cord between them pulsed with renewed energy. As they surveyed the command center, they noticed their perception had changed. The palace's systems seemed to call out to them, lines of code and energy patterns visible in their mind's eye. "We can help," they said, their voices overlapping once more. Without waiting for a response, they approached the nearest console. As their hands hovered over the controls, their skin took on a subtle metallic sheen. The systems responded to their mere presence, displays flickering to life and reactivating dormant defenses. Admiral Zhang watched in astonishment as Holmes and Selene interfaced directly with the palace's technology, their thoughts translating into commands faster than any human or betazoid could input manually. "Incredible," he breathed, then shook himself back to the present crisis. "Can you lock down the areas where the preserver data is displayed? We need to keep it out of Romulan hands." Holmes and Selene nodded in unison, their fingers dancing across the holographic interface. As they worked, the bioluminescent cord between them pulsed with increasing intensity, channeling energy in ways that defied conventional understanding. Across the palace, Counselor Vex led a team of engineers in rerouting power to critical systems. His knowledge of the complex's infrastructure proved invaluable as they brought defensive systems back online one by one. Dr. Hill and her team raced against time, working to contain and preserve the suddenly accessible preserver data. The value of this information was incalculable, potentially reshaping the balance of power in the quadrant if it fell into the wrong hands. As the battle reached a fever pitch, Admiral Zhang approached Holmes and Selene, his expression grim but determined. "We need to end this now," he said, outlining his plan for a localized spatial distortion to trap the remaining Romulan forces. The linked pair processed the idea, their hybrid minds analyzing variables at an inhuman speed. "It's risky," they said, their voices harmonizing, "but we can make it work." With a nod from Zhang, Holmes and Selene began to interface with the newly revealed preserver technology. Their bodies glowed with an otherworldly light as they pushed their evolved abilities to the limit. The bioluminescent cord between them pulsed rapidly, channeling more energy than seemed possible. Holographic displays throughout the command center came to life, showing the complex calculations and energy patterns required for Zhang's audacious attempt. As Holmes and Selene worked, their movements perfectly synchronized, the air around them began to shimmer with potential energy. "Spatial distortion field initializing," they announced, their voices ringing with an air of finality. "Prepare for activation." A low hum filled the air as the device powered up. The fate of the palace, the preserver data, and perhaps the entire quadrant hanging in the balance. The shimmering field of energy began to form around the areas still occupied by Romulan forces, its success or failure poised to shape the course of interstellar politics for generations to come. "Come!" The air crackled with tension as the spatial distortion field took shape, enveloping the areas still occupied by Romulan forces. Holmes and Selene's bodies trembled with exertion, their skin glistening with sweat as they channeled unprecedented amounts of energy. The bioluminescent cord connecting them pulsed rapidly, growing brighter with each passing second. As the field stabilized, trapping the remaining Romulans within its shimmering barrier, something unexpected occurred. The metallic sheen on Holmes and Selene's skin intensified, forming intricate patterns resembling circuitry. These new markings pulsed in sync with the cord between them, creating an otherworldly display of light and energy. Dr. Takahashi's eyes widened as she observed the changes. "Ambassador, Your Majesty, your vitals are fluctuating wildly. We need to—" "Not yet," Holmes and Selene interrupted in unison, their voices overlapping in an unsettling harmony. "We can do more." Their fingers danced across the holographic interface with inhuman speed and precision. Displays throughout the command center flickered to life, showing complex schematics and data streams that seemed to flow directly from the linked pair's minds. Admiral Zhang watched in awe as Holmes and Selene interfaced with the palace's systems at a level he'd never seen before. "They're accessing the preserver technology integrated into the building," he murmured. Dr. Hill, who had been working nearby to secure the fragments of preserver data, looked up from her console. "It's not just access," she said, her voice tinged with excitement and concern. "They're understanding it, controlling it in ways we never could." The strain on Holmes and Selene was evident. Their bodies shook and their breathing became labored. Dr. Takahashi moved closer, medical tricorder in hand. "Your neural patterns are becoming dangerously erratic," she warned. "You need to stop before—" A sudden alarm blared through the command center, cutting off the doctor's words. Counselor Vex, who had been monitoring the palace's defensive systems, called out, "The spatial distortion field is destabilizing." Holmes and Selene's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. Without a word, they redirected their efforts, channeling energy through their linked bodies and into the palace's power grid. The bioluminescent cord between them grew brighter and thicker, pulsing with increasing intensity. As they worked to stabilize the field, their physical forms began to blur at the edges. The circuitry-like patterns on their skin glowed brightly, shifting and changing as if alive. Dr. Takahashi's tricorder emitted a series of urgent beeps, its readings off the charts. "We need to stop them," she insisted, turning to Admiral Zhang. "Their physiology can't handle this level of stress for much longer." Before Zhang could respond, a massive surge of energy coursed through the palace's systems. The surge originated from Holmes and Selene, flowing through their linked bodies and into the building itself. Holographic displays throughout the command center flickered and changed, now showing a three-dimensional star map of the sector. As the energy wave subsided, Holmes and Selene collapsed to the floor, their bodies still connected by the glowing cord. The circuitry patterns on their skin pulsed with residual energy, and their eyes shone with an alien light. They remained conscious but seemed distant, as if their minds were processing vast amounts of information. Dr. Takahashi and her medical team rushed to their side, deploying a mix of standard and improvised treatments to stabilize their unique hybrid physiology. As they worked, Holmes and Selene began to speak, their voices overlapping in an unsettling chorus. "The outpost," they said, their gaze fixed on something beyond the room. "Hidden in the Denari system, ancient technology, waiting to be awakened." Admiral Zhang and High Commander Thalos exchanged glances, the implications of this revelation clear. A preserver outpost potentially filled with intact technology could shift the balance of power in the quadrant. Dr. Hill, who had been analyzing the newly secured preserver data, approached the group. "There are references in the data to a stabilization process," she reported. "It might help them, but we'd need access to technology at the outpost." As the immediate crisis subsided and the last of the Romulan forces were secured within the spatial distortion field, the command center buzzed with activity. Discussions of a potential expedition to the preserver outpost began in earnest, while medical staff continued to monitor Holmes and Selene's condition. The linked pair remained in their altered state, their minds clearly grappling with the vast influx of preserver knowledge. The bioluminescent cord connecting them had become a permanent feature of their shared physiology, a visible reminder of their irreversible bond. Counselor Vex approached Admiral Zhang, his expression thoughtful. "The people of Betazid will have questions about what's happened here," he said, "and about the future of our leadership." Zhang nodded, his gaze shifting to Holmes and Selene. "The same goes for Earth," he replied. "This bond between them, it's evolved far beyond what anyone could have predicted." As the day's events began to settle, new challenges loomed on the horizon. The potential expedition to the Preserver Outpost promised both great opportunity and significant danger. The unique connection between Holmes and Selene raised questions about their ability to continue in their roles as ambassador and queen. Yet for the moment, as the linked pair lay surrounded by medical staff and concerned allies, the future remained uncertain. The bioluminescent cord pulsed steadily between them, a symbol of their shared destiny and the unknown path that lay ahead. Ahead, the bioluminescent cord pulsed steadily between them, a symbol of their shared destiny and the unknown path that lay before them. As the hours passed, Dr. Takahashi and her medical team worked tirelessly to stabilize Holmes and Celine's condition. The unique hybrid physiology presented unprecedented challenges, forcing the doctors to improvise and adapt their treatment protocols on the fly. Their neural patterns are stabilizing, Dr. Takahashi announced, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of their brain activity. But the changes appear to be permanent. Admiral Zhang nodded grimly, his gaze shifting between the linked pair and the star map still displayed on the command center's main screen. "We need to convene an emergency summit," he said, turning to High Commander Thelos. "The implications of these events are too significant to ignore." Within hours, human and Betazoid leaders gathered in a secure conference room adjacent to the medical bay. The air was thick with tension as they debated their next steps. "The Preserver outpost must be our top priority," Zhang argued, gesturing to the holographic representation of the Denari system. "The potential for advanced technology and knowledge is too great to ignore, especially given recent Romulan aggression." High Commander Thelos leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "Agreed, but we must also consider the internal challenges we now face. The transformation of our queen has left the Betazoid people unsettled." As if on cue, a message from the Betazoid High Council flashed across the room's displays. Counselor Vex, who had been monitoring communications, read it aloud with a furrowed brow. "The Council demands that Queen Celine undergo the traditional trials to prove her fitness to rule," he announced, his voice tinged with concern. "They cite her altered physiology as grounds for reevaluation." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. The trials, designed to test a monarch's mental and physical capabilities, had never been conducted on an individual with such drastically altered physiology. Before anyone could respond, Holmes's voice echoed through the room, startling the assembled leaders. "We will participate in the trials," he said, his words overlapping with Celine's in perfect unison. All eyes turned to the entrance of the conference room, where Holmes and Celine stood, supported by medical staff. The bioluminescent cord between them pulsed with renewed energy, and their skin still bore the faint, circuitry-like patterns from their earlier transformation. "Both of us," Celine added, her voice harmonizing with Holmes's. "Our bond makes this a shared journey." Counselor Vex stepped forward, his political acumen sensing an opportunity. "A noble gesture, Ambassador," he said, his tone carefully measured. "But the trials are traditionally reserved for Betazoid royalty. Perhaps we can reach a compromise. Allow Ambassador Holmes to participate, but subject him to additional tests to prove his loyalty to Betazoid interests." As discussions about the trials heated up, Dr. Hill burst into the room, her eyes wide with excitement. "I've made a breakthrough," she announced, holding up a data pad. "The Preserver data contains references to a device capable of stabilizing hybrid life forms. It could be the key to managing Holmes and Celine's condition." A hush fell over the room as the implications sank in. Admiral Zhang was the first to break the silence. "Where is this device located?" Dr. Hill's expression grew serious. "Deep within the Preserver outpost in the Denari system." The room erupted into a flurry of discussion, with leaders debating the risks and potential rewards of mounting an expedition to the outpost. As the arguments reached a fever pitch, Holmes and Celine stepped forward, their movements perfectly synchronized. "We propose a solution," they said, their voices blending into one. "Let the expedition serve as part of our trials. We will join the team as key members, proving our worth and loyalty in a real-world scenario." The proposal hung in the air for a moment before Admiral Zhang nodded slowly. "It's unorthodox, but these are unprecedented times. We'll need to assemble a team quickly." Over the next few days, preparations for the expedition intensified. A mix of human and Betazoid scientists, security personnel, and technical experts were selected to join the mission. Dr. Takahashi and Dr. Hill were among those chosen, their expertise deemed crucial for monitoring Holmes and Celine's condition and deciphering Preserver technology. As the departure date approached, Holmes and Celine discovered new abilities stemming from their hybrid physiology. During a briefing session, they suddenly found themselves communicating telepathically across the entire palace complex, far exceeding the range of normal betazoid abilities. Fascinating, Dr. Takahashi muttered, her medical tricorder whirring as she scanned the pair. Your neural pathways are evolving at an unprecedented rate. The newfound power proved invaluable in coordinating the complex logistics of the upcoming mission. Holmes and Celine worked tirelessly, their shared consciousness allowing them to multitask with incredible efficiency. Finally, the day of departure arrived. The expedition team gathered in the main hangar, where a specially modified starship awaited them. Its sleek hull gleamed under the hangar lights, a testament to the combined ingenuity of human and betazoid engineers. As the team prepared to board, a commotion at the hangar entrance caught their attention. A group of protesters had gathered, their voices rising in anger and fear. "Stop the expedition!" one shouted, waving a sign covered in anti-alien slogans. "We can't risk more contamination from alien technology." Admiral Zhang frowned, turning to High Commander Thelos. "We expected some opposition, but this is more intense than anticipated." Thelos nodded grimly. "Similar protests are occurring on Beta Z. The conservative factions are stirring up fear of the unknown." Despite the protests, the expedition launched as planned. Holmes and Celine were installed in a specially designed chamber that allowed them to interface directly with the ship's systems. As the starship broke orbit and set course for the Preserver outpost, the linked pair experienced a sudden surge of shared memories and knowledge. "The Preservers," Holmes whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. "Their history, their technology. It's all there, just out of reach." Celine nodded, her mind intertwined with his. "Fragments, pieces of a greater whole. We need to find that outpost." As the ship entered deep space, the expedition faced its first major challenge. A series of gravitational anomalies forced them off their planned course, threatening to tear the ship apart. "Conventional navigation is failing," the pilot announced, her voice tense. "We're being pulled off course." Without hesitation, Holmes and Celine reached out with their minds, interfacing directly with the ship's systems. Their bodies glowed with an otherworldly light as they processed vast amounts of data, plotting a safe course through the anomalies. The rest of the crew watched in awe and unease as the transformed pair guided the ship to safety, their abilities far surpassing anything they had seen before. The incident highlighted the growing gap between Holmes and Celine and their former species, raising unspoken questions about the future. As they approached the star system containing the Preserver outpost, long-range sensors detected unusual energy signatures. The readings flickered across the main view screen, drawing concerned looks from the science team. "Those patterns," Dr. Hill murmured, her eyes narrowing, "they're unlike anything in our databases." Holmes and Celine exchanged a glance, their linked minds processing the data. "The outpost," they said in unison, "it's not abandoned." The implications of their words hung heavy in the air as the ship entered orbit around a seemingly barren planet. As the expedition prepared for their descent to the surface, questions raced through everyone's minds. What would they find in the Preserver outpost? Who or what might be guarding its ancient secrets? And how would the discoveries they made reshape the future of human-betazoid relations and the balance of power in the galaxy? Holmes and Celine stood at the forefront of the landing party, their bodies glowing with anticipation. The bioluminescent cord between them pulsed with renewed energy as they prepared to step into the unknown, leading their team towards a destiny that would change everything. The ship entered orbit around the barren planet, its surface a patchwork of deep crevasses and towering rock formations. As they approached, the bioluminescent cord connecting Holmes and Celine pulsed with increased intensity, responding to the proximity of ancient Preserver technology. Dr. Takahashi's eyes widened as she studied the readouts on her medical tricorder. "Their neural activity is off the charts," she announced, her voice a mix of excitement and concern. "Whatever's down there, it's having a profound effect on them." Admiral Zhang nodded, his expression grave. "Prepare for planetfall. We need to move quickly." The expedition team assembled in the shuttle bay, donning specialized environmental suits designed to withstand the harsh conditions below. Holmes and Celine, their hybrid physiology now incompatible with standard equipment, were fitted with custom-designed protective gear that accommodated their permanent physical link. As the shuttle began its descent through the turbulent atmosphere, the ship's systems erupted in a cacophony of alarms. Electromagnetic interference scrambled their navigation computers, leaving the pilot struggling to maintain control. "We're flying blind," the pilot shouted, her hands dancing across the controls. Without hesitation, Holmes and Celine stepped forward, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. They placed their hands on the shuttle's main console, the circuitry-like patterns on their skin pulsing in rhythm with the ship's systems. "We can guide us," they said in unison, their voices blending into one. "Trust us." The shuttle's erratic movements smoothed out as Holmes and Celine interfaced directly with its systems, drawing on their shared preserver knowledge to navigate the interference. They guided the craft to a concealed landing zone near the outpost's suspected location, touching down with barely a tremor. As the team disembarked, Dr. Hill activated a series of automated probes, sending them skittering across the rocky terrain. She studied the incoming data, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm detecting a pattern of energy signatures consistent with preserver technology," she reported. "But it's not on the surface. The outpost must be underground." The expedition began its trek across the treacherous landscape, with Holmes and Celine taking point. Their enhanced senses allowed them to detect subtle energy fluctuations, guiding the team towards a hidden entrance. As they approached a particularly steep ravine, the ground beneath their feet began to shift. Before anyone could react, the team found themselves sliding down into a previously concealed cavern, the entrance sealing behind them with a resounding thud. "Is everyone all right?" Admiral John called out, activating the lights on his suit. A chorus of affirmatives echoed through the cavern as the team regrouped. As their eyes adjusted to the dimness, they realized the walls around them were lined with faintly glowing patterns, reminiscent of the markings on Holmes and Celine's skin. "Fascinating," Dr. Hill breathed, running her scanner along the wall. "These patterns, they're not just decorative. They're carrying energy, data perhaps." The team cautiously advanced deeper into the complex, encountering a series of ancient security measures designed to repel intruders. Holmes and Celine, drawing on their shared preserver knowledge, guided the expedition past these obstacles with an almost prescient awareness of the dangers. As they penetrated further, the team discovered chambers filled with technology beyond their comprehension. Strange devices hummed with latent energy, their purpose a mystery. Dr. Takahashi's eyes lit up as her scanners detected something promising. "There," she exclaimed, pointing to a cluster of devices. "Those could potentially stabilize Holmes and Celine's condition, but how to operate them?" Before they could investigate further, their progress was halted by a shimmering energy barrier, blocking access to the outpost's central chamber. The team's attempts to disable or bypass it proved futile, their most advanced tools having no effect on the ancient technology. Holmes and Celine exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them. They stepped forward, approaching the barrier with measured steps. As they drew near, the energy field rippled and parted, reacting to their presence. The linked pair stepped through the opening, and suddenly their minds were flooded with a torrent of information. They staggered, overwhelmed by the influx of preserver knowledge. "The outpost," Holmes gasped, his voice overlapping with Celine's. "It was a laboratory for interspecies hybridization. That's why it resonates with us." Their attention was drawn to a massive device dominating the center of the chamber. They moved towards it, instinctively recognizing it as the key to stabilizing their condition. But as they approached, the outpost's automated defense systems suddenly sprang to life. Hovering drones and robotic guardians materialized around them, the last line of defense protecting the preserver's secrets. Admiral Zhang quickly organized the expedition into a defensive formation, while Dr. Hill worked feverishly to decipher the outpost's control systems. Holmes and Celine, their bodies now glowing with intensifying energy, realized their unique connection might be the key to pacifying the defenses. They joined hands, the bioluminescent cord between them pulsing with blinding intensity. As the robotic guardians closed in, Holmes and Celine began a complex series of movements, their actions mirroring each other perfectly. The outpost responded to their synchronized motions, the defensive systems hesitating in their attack. The linked pair's interaction with the ancient technology created a mesmerizing display of light and energy, their bodies moving in perfect harmony with the systems surrounding them. Suddenly, the central device activated, engulfing Holmes and Celine in a column of shimmering energy. The bioluminescent cord connecting them pulsed rapidly, matching the rhythm of the device. The rest of the team shielded their eyes as the energy output intensified, the entire chamber resonating with power. When the surge subsided, Holmes and Celine collapsed to the ground, their bodies still joined but visibly altered. The circuitry-like patterns on their skin had shifted, forming more intricate and symmetrical designs. Dr. Takahashi rushed to their side, her medical scanners indicating a significant change in their hybrid physiology. As she worked to stabilize them, the rest of the team watched in tense silence, unsure of what this transformation meant for their friends and colleagues. Slowly, Holmes and Celine regained consciousness, their eyes now shimmering with an otherworldly light. When they spoke, their voices resonated with newfound power and knowledge. "The device," they said in unison, "it has stabilized us. But it's done more than that. We now have access to vast repositories of preserver knowledge." The expedition team exchanged worried glances, realizing that they now faced a new and unexpected challenge. As Holmes and Selene rose to their feet, their movements fluid and synchronized. The air in the chamber crackled with potential. The fate of human betazoid relations and the balance of power in the galaxy now rested in the hands of these two transformed individuals. As the team contemplated their next move in the heart of the ancient preserver outpost, one thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same again. As Holmes and Celine rose to their feet, their movements fluid and synchronized, the air in the chamber crackled with potential. The expedition team watched in awe as the bioluminescent cord connecting the pair pulsed with renewed intensity, transforming into an intricate network of glowing filaments that danced across their skin. Dr. Takahashi rushed forward, her medical scanner whirring as she passed it over their bodies. "Incredible," she breathed, her eyes widening as she studied the readouts. "Your physiologies have achieved perfect balance. The human and betazoid aspects have fully integrated." Holmes and Celine turned to face the team, their eyes shimmering with an otherworldly light. When they spoke, their voices resonated in perfect harmony. "We can access the outpost systems now. The knowledge, it's vast." Without hesitation, they approached the central computer console. Their hands moved in perfect synchronization, fingers dancing across the alien interface. Suddenly, the chamber came alive with holographic displays, filling the air with swirling patterns of light and data. Admiral Zhang stepped forward, his expression a mix of wonder and concern. "What are you seeing?" "Everything," Holmes and Selene replied in unison. "The history of the preservers, their technologies, their experiments." Dr. Hill joined them at the console, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial hesitation. She began to catalog the information as it appeared, her eyes darting from one display to another. "This is extraordinary. Propulsion systems beyond our wildest dreams, energy generation methods that could power entire planets, medical technologies that could eradicate disease across known space." As the linked pair delved deeper into the preserver database, their expressions grew troubled. "There's more," Celine said, her voice low. "This outpost, it wasn't just for research." Holmes nodded, completing her thought. "It was a monitoring station. The preservers, they were conducting long-term experiments on various species, including humans and betazoids." A hush fell over the team as the implications sank in. High Commander Thalos, who had been observing silently, stepped forward. "Are you saying the preservers were responsible for our evolution?" Before Holmes or Celine could respond, a new alert flashed across the holographic displays. Their hands moved in tandem, pulling up a new set of data. "There's a warning here," Holmes announced, his voice urgent. "A cosmic event, a gravimetric wave. It occurs cyclically, every few thousand years. And it's due to hit this sector within months," Celine added, her eyes scanning the data. "Without intervention, it could devastate entire star systems." Admiral Zhang's posture stiffened. "We need to report this immediately. Prepare for immediate evacuation. Download everything you can." As the team scrambled to gather their equipment and the precious preserver data, Holmes and Celine worked feverishly at the console. Their fingers flew across the interface, downloading massive amounts of information into portable devices. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the chamber. Red warning lights flashed, and the sound of heavy machinery echoed through the complex. "The security systems," Holmes called out. "They're initiating a lockdown protocol." Celine's hands blurred across the console. "We're trying to override it, but the systems are ancient and complex." The expedition team watched in amazement as Holmes and Celine moved with inhuman grace and speed. Their bodies flowed together, perfectly synchronized as they manipulated holographic interfaces and physical controls simultaneously. The air around them seemed to shimmer with energy as they raced against time. "Almost got it!" they exclaimed in unison. A loud clank resonated through the chamber as the lockdown sequence halted mere seconds before completion. "We've created an override. We need to move now." The team didn't need to be told twice. They grabbed their equipment and the downloaded data, making a mad dash for the exit. As they ran through the tunnels, lights flickered and systems powered down behind them, sealing off access to the ancient facility. Emerging onto the planet's surface, they were met with a harsh, howling wind. A sandstorm had swept in during their absence, partially burying their shuttle. The team struggled against the abrasive particles, fighting to reach their only means of escape. Holmes and Celine, their enhanced bodies adapting to the extreme conditions, took charge. They moved with supernatural strength and agility, clearing sand from the shuttle's entry hatch and helping team members board safely. As the last of the expedition climbed aboard, the linked pair paused. They turned back towards the hidden entrance of the preserver outpost, their eyes unfocused as if listening to something only they could hear. "Holmes! Celine!" Admiral Zhang called from the shuttle's entrance. "We need to leave now." Snapping out of their trance, Holmes and Celine boarded the shuttle. As the hatch sealed behind them, they exchanged a knowing look. The faint energy signature they had sensed, a final echo of the vast preserver network, lingered in their minds, a reminder of the ancient legacy they now carried. The shuttle's engines roared to life, fighting against the planet's turbulent atmosphere. Holmes and Celine moved to the cockpit, working in perfect tandem with the pilot. Their enhanced senses allowed them to navigate through dangerous air pockets and electromagnetic disturbances that threatened to tear the small craft apart. As they broke free of the planet's gravitational pull, the expedition ship came into view. The shuttle docked smoothly, and the team disembarked, their faces a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Admiral Zhang wasted no time. "Prepare for immediate departure. We need to get this information back to Earth and Beta Z as quickly as possible." As the ship's engines hummed to life, Holmes and Celine stood at a viewport, their hands intertwined. The bioluminescent filaments connecting them pulsed steadily, mirroring the rhythm of their shared heartbeat. They gazed out at the stars, acutely aware that their unique bond now held the key to not only understanding their own evolution, but potentially saving countless lives across the sector. The expedition ship broke orbit, leaving the preserver planet behind. As they set course for home, Holmes and Celine knew that their journey was nowhere near the end. The race against time to prepare for the coming gravimetric wave had only just begun, and the political implications of their discoveries loomed large on the horizon. As the ship accelerated away from the preserver planet, Holmes and Celine turned from the viewport, their linked minds already processing the wealth of information they had acquired. The expedition ship hummed with activity as the crew worked to analyze the data from the ancient outpost. Dr. Takahashi approached the linked pair, her medical scanner at the ready. "We need to run a full series of tests to understand the extent of your transformation," she said, gesturing towards the medical bay. Holmes and Celine nodded in unison, following the doctor. As they walked, crew members stopped to stare, fascinated by the intricate network of bioluminescent filaments connecting the two. In the medical bay, Dr. Takahashi and her team conducted a battery of examinations. They documented enhanced physical abilities, accelerated healing, and unprecedented mental acuity. Holmes and Celine remained calm throughout the process, their synchronized breathing and movements a testament to their newfound connection. During one particularly intense scan, Something unexpected occurred. Holmes and Celine suddenly gasped, their eyes widening in shock. The bioluminescent filaments pulsed rapidly, emitting a bright glow that filled the room. "What's happening?" Dr. Takahashi asked, alarmed. Holmes and Celine spoke in perfect unison, their voices overlapping. We can hear them, everyone, the entire crew." Their bodies tensed, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of thoughts and emotions from every person on the ship. The linked pair collapsed, their minds struggling to process the sensory overload. Dr. Takahashi sprang into action. "We need to stabilize them, prepare a sedative, and set up the EM shielding." The medical team worked quickly, administering medication and activating specialized electromagnetic fields to dampen the intensity of Holmes and Celine's expanded psychic reach. Gradually, the linked pair's breathing steadied, and the frantic pulsing of their bioluminescent connection slowed to a steady rhythm. As Holmes and Celine regained consciousness, Admiral Zhang entered the medical bay. "Report," he demanded, his voice tight with concern. Dr. Takahashi explained the situation, detailing the unexpected surge in the pair's psychic abilities. The Admiral listened intently, his brow furrowing as he considered the implications. "We need to understand the full extent of these new abilities," Zhang said, "but we must proceed with caution. The information we've uncovered, especially regarding the approaching gravimetric wave, is too sensitive to risk communication leaks." He turned to address the entire medical team. "As of this moment, we are maintaining communication silence with Earth and Beta Z Prime. No transmissions leave this ship without my express authorization. Is that clear?" The crew nodded, though some exchanged uneasy glances. Zhang's decision would undoubtedly create tension, but the Admiral stood firm. Over the next few days, Holmes and Celine worked with Dr. Takahashi to explore their enhanced abilities under controlled conditions. They discovered that through physical contact, they could temporarily extend their psychic link to others, sharing their perception and access to preserver knowledge. This ability proved invaluable as the expedition team worked to analyze the vast amount of data retrieved from the preserver outpost. Scientists and analysts took turns connecting with Holmes and Celine, their minds expanding to grasp complex concepts and decipher ancient technologies. As the ship approached the outer reaches of charted space, the bridge crew detected an anomaly. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out, "we're picking up an unidentified vessel. It appears to be adrift in a debris field." Zhang moved to the main view screen, studying the image of a strange ship unlike any he had ever seen. "Origin?" "Unknown, sir," the officer replied. "Design doesn't match any known species. Preliminary analysis suggests it may predate both human and Betazoid space exploration." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Interesting. Prepare an away team for investigation. We may find valuable technology or information aboard." As the team assembled, Holmes and Celine approached Zhang. "Admiral," Holmes began, "we'd like to volunteer for the away mission." Celine continued seamlessly. "Our abilities make us uniquely suited to explore unknown environments." Zhang considered for a moment, then nodded. "Agreed. You'll join High Commander Thelos's team. Prepare for immediate deployment." As the away team donned their environmental suits, Holmes and Celine felt a strange pull towards the mysterious vessel. They exchanged a glance, their linked minds acknowledging a faint energy signature, reminiscent of preserver technology. The team boarded a shuttle and made their way to the derelict ship. As they approached, the true scale of the vessel became apparent. It dwarfed their shuttle, its hull covered in intricate patterns and markings that defied easy categorization. High Commander Thelos led the team through the airlock, his voice tense as he issued instructions. "Stay alert. We don't know what we might encounter here." Holmes and Celine moved in perfect synchronization, their enhanced senses probing the darkened corridors. The ship's interior was a maze of advanced technology, bridging the gap between current capabilities and preserver levels of advancement. As they delved deeper into the vessel, the linked pair's bioluminescent connection pulsed with increasing intensity. They guided the team through twisting passageways, drawn by an energy source they could sense but not yet see. Finally, they arrived at a sealed chamber. Holmes and Celine approached the door, their hands moving in tandem across its surface. Drawing on their shared preserver knowledge, they worked to decipher the locking mechanism. With a soft hiss, the chamber opened, bathing the team in a soft, pulsating light. At its center stood a crystalline structure, emitting an energy signature that resonated with Holmes and Celine's enhanced physiology. As they stepped towards the crystal, their bioluminescent connection flared brilliantly. The crystal responded, projecting a holographic interface that only the linked pair could fully perceive and interact with. Holmes and Celine's eyes widened as they absorbed the information flooding their shared consciousness. They turned to the away team, their voices filled with urgency and excitement. "This crystal," Holmes began. "It contains crucial information," Celine continued. "About a device," they said in unison, "that could protect us from the gravimetric wave." High Commander Thalos tapped his communicator. "Thalos to Admiral Zhang. We've made a significant discovery. Request immediate assistance in securing and transporting an alien artifact." As the away team prepared to return to the expedition ship with their newfound treasure, Holmes and Celine remained transfixed by the crystal. Their minds raced with the possibilities and challenges that lay ahead, knowing that the fate of both their peoples might rest in the knowledge contained within this ancient device. Artifact. As they prepared to transport the crystal back to the expedition ship, alarms suddenly blared throughout the derelict vessel. "Proximity alert!" High Commander Thalos shouted, his eyes fixed on his tricorder. "Multiple ships entering the system." The away team rushed back to their shuttle, the crystal safely secured. As they approached the expedition ship, the view screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Zhang's grim face. "We've detected a Romulan war fleet on an intercept course," Zhang announced, his voice taut with tension. "Prepare for immediate departure." The shuttle docked swiftly, and as the away team disembarked, Holmes and Celine felt a surge of urgency coursing through their shared consciousness. They exchanged a glance, their bioluminescent filaments pulsing rapidly. "Admiral," Holmes began, stepping forward. "We have a proposal," Celine finished, their voices overlapping. Zhang raised an eyebrow, gesturing for them to continue. The linked pair explained their plan to use their enhanced abilities to locate additional preserver outposts, potentially finding the missing components for the protective device within days. "It's risky," Zhang mused, stroking his chin, "but given our current situation, it may be our best option." With the Admiral's approval, Holmes and Celine immediately set to work with Dr. Hill and the science team. Their movements became increasingly synchronized as they integrated elements of preserver technology into the ship's long-range sensors. As they worked, the air around Holmes and Celine began to shimmer with an almost imperceptible haze. Crew members passing by found themselves suddenly more alert, their minds sharper and more focused. Dr. Takahashi, observing from nearby, noticed the change and approached with her medical scanner. "Fascinating," she muttered, studying the readings. "Your bodies are emitting some kind of pheromone. It's affecting the crew differently based on their species." Holmes and Celine nodded in unison, their eyes never leaving their work. "We can use this," they said simultaneously. "It will help accelerate our efforts." True to their word, the sensor modifications were completed ahead of schedule. As the expedition ship altered course to investigate the first promising energy signature, tension aboard the vessel continued to mount. The ship arrived at an uninhabited planet, its atmosphere a swirling mass of toxic gases. Holmes and Celine volunteered to lead the away team, their hybrid physiology uniquely suited to withstand the harsh conditions. As they donned their environmental suits, Holmes and Celine felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through their bodies. Their hands brushed against each other as they performed final checks, sending a jolt of electricity through their linked minds. On the planet's surface, they discovered the ruins of an ancient preserver facility. As they approached, their bioluminescent connection flared brightly, resonating with the dormant technology. Suddenly, long-dormant systems hummed to life, revealing a hidden chamber. "There!" Celine exclaimed, pointing to a glowing object at the center of the room. "The component we need," Holmes confirmed, already moving towards it. As they worked to retrieve the artifact, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Violent earthquakes shook the facility, causing ancient structures to crumble around them. "We need to move now," Thalos shouted, his voice barely audible over the rumbling. Holmes and Celine led the way, their enhanced strength and agility allowing them to navigate the collapsing passageways with preternatural grace. As toxic gases seeped in through newly formed fissures, the pair instinctively pressed closer together, their bodies working in perfect harmony to protect themselves and guide the team to safety. Back aboard the expedition ship, Holmes and Celine found themselves overwhelmed by a surge of conflicting sensations. The adrenaline from their narrow escape, combined with their intensified bond, created an almost unbearable urge for physical closeness. Dr. Takahashi, noticing their distress and the increasing effect of their pheromones on the crew, quickly intervened. "Ambassador Holmes, Queen Celine, I need you to isolate yourselves in the prepared quarters immediately. It's for your safety and the crew's." As the door to their quarters sealed behind them, Holmes and Celine finally gave in to the overwhelming need for contact. Their hands explored each other's transformed bodies, discovering new sensitivities and unfamiliar responses. Their bioluminescent connection pulsed with increasing intensity, creating a dazzling light show visible even through the walls of their quarters. Outside, Dr. Hill observed the display with growing excitement. "Admiral," he called out, his eyes wide with realization, "I believe their connection might be the key to activating the preserver component fully." Before John could respond, a priority message from Earth flashed across his console. His face darkened as he read the contents, detailing increased Romulan activity and orders to return immediately with all discovered preserver technology. As Zhang contemplated his next move, long-range sensors suddenly lit up with activity. A massive energy surge erupted from a nearby star system, its signature unmistakably preserver in origin. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, his voice tight with urgency, "the Romulan fleet has altered course. They're heading for the energy source." Zhang's mind focused as he weighed his options. The fate of multiple worlds hung in the balance, with Earth's direct orders on one side and the potential salvation of Beta Z Prime on the other. At that moment, Holmes and Celine emerged from their quarters, their eyes bright with purpose and their bodies moving in perfect synchronization. "Admiral," they said in unison, their voices resonating with newfound power, "we have a plan." "Proposal," they finished in unison, their eyes gleaming with newfound commitment. Admiral Zhang studied the pair intently, weighing the gravity of the situation against the potential of their enhanced abilities. After a moment of tense silence, he nodded decisively. "Very well," Zhang said, his voice firm. "We'll pursue the preserver technology. Helm, alter course to intercept that energy surge." As the order was given, Holmes and Celine moved in perfect synchronization toward the navigation console. The crew watched in amazement as the linked pair interfaced with the ship's systems, their bioluminescent filaments pulsing in rhythm with the ship's power core. "With your permission, Admiral," Holmes began, "we can guide the ship more efficiently," Celine continued. Zhang hesitated only briefly before giving his assent. As Holmes and Celine took control, the ship's movements became fluid and precise. The view screen displayed a chaotic mess of asteroids and spatial anomalies, yet the expedition ship wove through the dangers with unnatural grace. The bridge crew felt a sudden wave of heightened awareness wash over them. Dr. Takahashi, monitoring the situation from her station, reported, "Admiral, the pheromones emitted by Holmes and Celine are affecting the crew. It's increasing focus and sensory perception across all departments." Zhang nodded, noticing his own sharpened senses. "Excellent. We'll need every advantage we can get." As they neared their destination, a massive spatial anomaly loomed before them. The swirling vortex of energy pulsed with patterns that mirrored the markings on Holmes and Selena's skin. "It's a gateway," the linked pair announced simultaneously, their voices resonating with an otherworldly timbre, "to a hidden preserver facility." Without waiting for orders, Holmes and Celine guided the ship towards the anomaly. The passage was violent, systems fluctuating wildly as they pushed through the turbulent energy field. The linked pair's bodies tensed visibly, sweat beading on their foreheads as they strained to maintain control. Emerging on the other side, the crew gasped at the sight before them. A massive preserver space station floated in an artificially constructed pocket of space, its surface covered in intricate patterns matching Holmes and Celine's bioluminescent filaments. The moment of awe was short-lived as sensors blared a warning. Romulan fleet detected, the tactical officer announced. They're entering the anomaly behind us. Zhang's expression hardened. Prepare an away team immediately. We need to board that station and find what we came for. Holmes and Celine stepped forward, their movements slightly unsteady after the strain of navigating the anomaly. We should lead the team, Holmes stated. Our connection to the preserver technology is crucial, Celine added. Dr. Takahashi interjected, concern evident in her voice. Admiral, their physical condition... Before she could finish, Holmes and Celine suddenly stiffened, their eyes going wide. The air around them shimmered as their psychic bonds surged. For a moment they stood frozen, their minds overwhelmed by a vast influx of information. Then as quickly as it began, the moment passed. Holmes and Celine collapsed into each other's arms, their bodies trembling from the experience. We saw it, they whispered in unison as the medical team rushed to their side. The entire layout of the station. We know where to go. Zhang looked from the weakened pair to the approaching Romulan fleet on the tactical display. Time was running out, and he knew he had to make a decision. Doctor, he addressed Takahashi, can they function? Takahashi hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. With the proper support, yes, but it's risky. Zhang turned to Holmes and Celine, who were already struggling to their feet. You're certain you can guide us to what we need? The linked pair nodded, their dedication evident despite their weakened state. We are, Admiral. Then gear up, Zhang ordered. You're leading the away team. As Holmes and Celine donned specialized environmental suits designed for their hybrid physiology, the rest of the away team prepared for boarding. The expedition ship moved into position alongside the preserver station, its docking systems engaging with ancient, yet perfectly compatible technology. The moment the airlock opened, Holmes and Celine stepped onto the station, their bioluminescent connection flaring brightly in response to the surrounding preserver technology. Behind them, the away team moved cautiously, weapons at the ready. Suddenly, the station hummed to life. Dormant defense systems activated, ancient machines rising from hidden compartments to confront the intruders. This way, Holmes and Celine called out in unison, their voices echoing through the vast corridors. They moved with renewed energy, their shared knowledge guiding them through the labyrinth of the station. As they navigated deeper into the facility, disabling defense systems and unlocking sealed passageways, Admiral Zhang's voice crackled over the comms. Away team, be advised. Romulan ships are emerging from the anomaly. You have minutes before they're upon us. The urgency of their mission pressed down on them as they finally reached the central control room. The vast chamber was filled with technology beyond their wildest imaginations, including the components they so desperately needed. Holmes and Celine approached the central console, their hands moving in perfect synchronization across its surface. As they interfaced with the ancient systems, their bioluminescent connection flared with unprecedented intensity, bathing the entire room in an ethereal glow. The station came alive around them, holographic displays springing into existence to reveal the full scope of the preserver's plans for the sector. Holmes and Celine stood at the heart of it all, their bodies pulsing with energy as they accessed the full power of the facility. We can do more than just complete the protective device, Holmes began, his voice filled with awe. We can reactivate preserver defense systems throughout the entire sector, Celine finished. As the rest of the away team rushed to secure the necessary components, Holmes and Celine remained at the console, their minds fully linked with the station's systems. Outside, the Romulan fleet began its assault on the expedition ship, adding urgency to their efforts. With their hands intertwined and their bodies glowing with otherworldly energy, Holmes and Celine prepared to unleash the full potential of the preserver technology. The fate of countless lives hung in the balance as they pushed their hybrid physiology to its absolute limits, risking their very identities in a desperate bid to save the sector. The air around them crackled with power as they initiated the activation sequence, their merged consciousness expanding to encompass the vast network of preserver defenses. As the station's energy levels surged, Holmes and Celine felt their individual selves beginning to blur, their separate identities merging into something greater and more terrible than either had ever imagined. In that moment of fusion, Holmes and Celine unleashed the full power of the preserver station. A massive pulse of energy erupted from the facility, radiating outward in concentric waves of blinding light. The away team shielded their eyes as the surge washed over them, leaving their skin tingling with residual charge. Status report. Zhang's voice crackled over the comms, urgent and strained. Holmes and Celine spoke as one, their voices resonating with newfound authority. Energy pulse successful, Admiral. Romulan fleet temporarily neutralized. On the interface, the Romulan ships hung motionless in space, their weapon systems dark and propulsion cores offline. The expedition ship's tactical officer confirmed, Romulan vessels disabled, sir. We have a window of opportunity. Zhang wasted no time. Away team, secure the components and return immediately. We're not out of this yet. As the rest of the team scrambled to gather the crucial preserver technology, Holmes and Celine led the way back through the station's winding corridors. Their movements were fluid and precise, effortlessly bypassing the now dormant defense systems. The group reached the airlock in record time, the ship's hull gleaming before them. As they crossed the threshold, Dr. Takahashi was already waiting, medical scanner in hand. Ambassador, Your Majesty, I need to examine you immediately, she insisted, her eyes widening at the sight of their transformed bodies. The bioluminescent filaments that had once been confined to their hands now sprawled across their entire forms, in intricate, pulsating patterns. Each throb of light seemed to echo the distant hum of the preserver station. As Takahashi ran her scans, Zhang's voice came over the ship-wide comm. All hands, prepare for immediate departure. Helm, move us to a safe distance from the station. The deck plates vibrated beneath their feet as the ship's engines roared to life. Through the viewport, they watched the massive preserver structure recede, its surface still crackling with residual energy. Fascinating, Takahashi muttered, her eyes fixed on her readings. The energy exposure has accelerated the changes in your hybrid physiology. These new patterns, they're not just cosmetic. They seem to be forming a direct link with the preserver systems. Holmes and Celine nodded in unison, their eyes distant as if listening to a far-off song. We can feel it, Celine began. The station, the ship, all of it, Holmes finished. It's like we're part of a vast network. Zhang strode onto the bridge, his face grim. Status of the Romulan fleet? Showing signs of recovery, sir, the tactical officer reported. Estimate full systems restoration in 10 minutes. The Admiral's eyes sharp. That's our window. Initiate deployment of the protective device. As the crew rushed to comply, Holmes and Celine moved to the science station. Their hands danced over the controls in perfect synchronization, fine-tuning the device's output. Energy field expanding, the science officer announced, encompassing both our ship and the preserver station. Zhang nodded, his eyes fixed on the long-range sensor display. Gravimetric wave detected. Time to impact? 17 minutes, sir. The bridge fell silent as the enormity of the situation sank in. The wave's approach was visible even to the naked eye, a rippling distortion in the fabric of space-time itself. Holmes and Celine worked feverishly, drawing on their newly expanded knowledge to optimize the protective field. Sweat beaded on their brows, their skin glowing with an otherworldly light. Romulan fleet powering up. The tactical officer's shout shattered the tense silence. Weapon systems coming online. Zhang's response was immediate. Raise shields. Activate the station's defense grid. The ship rocked as the first volley of Romulan disruptor fire struck their shields. Holmes and Celine's eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Admiral, Holmes began, his voice tight with urgency. We need to get to engineering, Celine finished. Before Zhang could respond, a massive impact shook the ship. Sparks erupted from nearby consoles as alarms blared. Direct hit, the tactical officer shouted. Shields at 60%. Damage to decks 7 through 9. Zhang's face hardened. Go, he ordered Holmes and Celine. Do what you need to do. The linked pair sprinted from the bridge, their bodies moving in perfect harmony. As they raced through the corridors, the ship shuddered under another barrage of Romulan fire. They burst into engineering, where chaos reigned. Crew members scrambled to contain plasma leaks and reroute power as systems flickered and failed. The protective field generators are destabilizing, the chief engineer shouted over the din. Holmes and Celine moved as one, their hands flying over the control panels. As they worked, their bodies began to pulse with an intense, rhythmic glow. The air around them grew thick with pheromones, affecting everyone in the vicinity. The engineering crew, initially disoriented by the sudden onslaught of chemical signals, found their focus sharpening. Ideas flowed more freely, calculations came faster, and solutions presented themselves with startling clarity. Reroute power from the secondary EPS conduits, Holmes called out, his voice strained. Adjust the field harmonics to match the station's output, Celine added, her fingers dancing across the controls. The protective field surged back to full strength just as the gravimetric wave made contact. The entire ship groaned under the strain, hull plates creaking as space itself seemed to twist and bend around them. Holmes and Celine stood at the heart of it all, their bodies serving as living conduits between the ship's systems and the ancient preserver technology. Energy crackled between them, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing in time with the cosmic forces battering against the shield. Outside, the Romulan fleet was not so fortunate. Unprotected by the preserver technology, their ships bucked and heaved in the gravimetric turbulence. Hulls buckled, warp cores destabilized, and one by one, the Romulan vessels began to break apart. As the wave passed, leaving devastation in its wake, the Romulan commander made the only choice left to him. The remaining ships, battered and barely functional, limped away from the battlefield, leaving the expedition ship and the preserver station standing triumphant against the backdrop of twisted space. On the bridge, Admiral Zhang allowed himself a moment of relief before turning to face the challenges ahead. The preserver station, now fully operational under their control, represented a seismic shift in the balance of power. As he began drafting plans for its study and utilization, his thoughts turned to Holmes and Celine. The linked pair, still aglow with residual energy, found themselves at the center of attention once more. Their evolving abilities and deepening bond raised as many questions as they answered. As the expedition ship prepared to return to charted space, Holmes and Celine knew that their journey of discovery was not nearly finished. With Earth and Beta Z Prime awaiting their return, carrying the means to protect against future cosmic threats and a treasure trove of preserver technology, the stage was set for a new era of interstellar cooperation. Holmes and Celine, their destinies now irrevocably intertwined, stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, their transformed bodies a testament to the power of unity in the face of cosmic peril. As the expedition ship charted its course back to Earth in Beta Z Prime, the aftermath of their encounter with the preserver technology continued to reverberate through the vessel. Ambassador Holmes and Queen Celine, their bodies now covered in pulsating bioluminescent patterns, found themselves at the center of both scientific curiosity and operational concern. Admiral Zhang, recognizing the need for discretion, assigned separate quarters to the pair. For the time being, it's best if you maintain some physical distance, he explained, his eyes darting between their glowing forms. We need to understand the full extent of your transformation before we can proceed safely. Despite the Admiral's precautions, Holmes and Celine felt an irresistible pull towards each other. They began meeting regularly in the ship's observation lounge, ostensibly to discuss the implications of their discoveries. During one such rendezvous, as they stood before the vast window overlooking the stars, their proximity triggered an intense physiological response. The bioluminescent patterns on their skin flared brightly, casting the lounge in an ethereal glow. Holmes felt a powerful urge to reach out and touch Celine, his hand trembling with the effort of restraint. "Ambassador," Celine whispered, her voice strained. "I don't think we can—" Before she could finish, Holmes closed the distance between them. The moment their hands touched, a surge of energy coursed through their bodies. The ship's lights flickered, and nearby consoles emitted a series of alarming beeps. They sprang apart, eyes wide with shock and a hint of fear. "We need to report this to Dr. Takahashi," Holmes said, his breath coming in short gasps. Dr. Takahashi's face grew increasingly concerned as she ran her scans. "Your hybrid physiology is still evolving," she explained, studying the readouts. "You're now capable of generating and channeling significant amounts of preserver-based energy. It's fascinating, but it poses a risk to our ship's systems. In response to this development, Dr. Hill and her engineering team began work on specially designed containment suits. These will help regulate your energy output, Dr. Hill explained as she took measurements of Holmes and Celine. We're incorporating preserver technology to ensure they can handle the unique properties of your condition. As the ship approached the border of charted space, a new challenge arose. Long-range sensors detected unusual activity near a remote outpost, prompting Admiral Zhang to order a detour. Upon reaching the location, they encountered a small fleet of unmarked vessels, their advanced cloaking technology having kept them hidden until now. Zhang's expression darkened as he surveyed the tactical display. This has all the hallmarks of that shadow organization we've been hearing whispers about, he muttered. Faced with this new threat, Holmes and Celine volunteered to use their enhanced abilities. Despite Dr. Takahashi's protests, Zhang saw no other option. Proceed with caution, he ordered as the pair donned prototype versions of their containment suits. In the sensor array room, Holmes and Celine stood surrounded by monitoring equipment. They joined hands, their bioluminescent patterns synchronizing instantly. A focused beam of energy erupted from their joined palms, penetrating the cloaking fields of the unmarked vessels. The effort was immense. Sweat beaded on their brows as they strained to maintain the connection. Alarms blared as the ship's systems detected power fluctuations. "Disengage now!" Zhang's voice crackled over the intercom, but Holmes and Celine were beyond hearing. Their consciousness had merged, their bodies beginning to physically fuse as their bioluminescent patterns flowed between them like liquid light. Dr. Takahashi and her team burst into the room, carrying a device emitting a carefully calibrated electromagnetic pulse. The pulse struck Holmes and Celine, disrupting their energy flow and forcibly separating them. They collapsed to the floor unconscious, thin wisps of smoke rising from their bodies. As the medical team rushed to stabilize the pair, the unmarked vessels launched their attack. The expedition ship rocked under the first volley of fire. "Shields at 80%, the tactical officer reported as Zhang coordinated their defense. In the medical bay, Dr. Takahashi made a startling discovery. "Admiral," she called over the comm, her voice tight with urgency. "The energy discharge has altered their physiology again. They're generating a new type of energy that resonates with our preserver tech." Before Zhang could respond, Holmes and Celine snapped awake. Their eyes, now glowing with an otherworldly light, locked onto each other. Without a word, they rose from their beds and moved in perfect synchronization toward the bridge. As they entered, the ship shuddered under another barrage of enemy fire. Zhang turned to face them, taking in their determined expressions and the power radiating from their bodies. "Admiral," Holmes began, his voice resonating with newfound strength. "We have a plan," Celine finished, her eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the advancing enemy vessels. Zhang nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. "Whatever you're going to do," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them, "do it now." Holmes and Celine moved to the center of the bridge, their hands clasped tightly together. As the enemy ships closed in for the kill, they began to channel their newfound energy, preparing to unleash the full extent of their evolving powers. As their hands joined, a blinding light erupted from their bodies, forcing the bridge crew to shield their eyes. Suddenly, alarms blared as the containment suits began to buckle under the immense energy coursing through Holmes and Celine. The seams split, revealing more of their luminescent skin patterns. Admiral Zhang reacted swiftly, his voice cutting through the chaos. "All hands, protective eyewear now," he commanded, reaching for his own pair of shaded goggles. The bridge crew scrambled to comply as Holmes and Celine stepped forward in perfect unison. Their movements were fluid, almost otherworldly, as they approached the main control console. Without hesitation, they placed their hands on the smooth surface, establishing a direct link with the ship's systems. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The ship's power levels surged, consoles sparked, and lights flickered wildly. The vessel groaned as if alive, integrating with the preserver-enhanced energy flowing from the linked pair. "Power levels are off the charts, Admiral." The chief engineer's voice crackled over the comm. "We're seeing capabilities we've never encountered before." Holmes and Celine stood motionless, their eyes closed in concentration. The air around them crackled with energy, creating a shimmering haze that distorted their forms. Suddenly, their eyes snapped open, glowing with an intense, otherworldly light. Now, they spoke in unison, their voices resonating with power. A massive electromagnetic pulse erupted from the ship, expanding outward in a visible wave of energy. The unmarked vessels surrounding them shuddered as the pulse struck, their weapons and propulsion systems going dark. High Commander Thelos, his voice tight with controlled excitement, called out, "Enemy ships disabled, Admiral. Weapons and engines are offline." Zhang nodded sharply. "Excellent. Target their critical systems and fire at will. Disable them completely." The expedition ship's weapons lanced out, striking the vulnerable enemy vessels with surgical precision. Within moments, the threat was neutralized, the attacking ships now drifting helplessly in space. As the last enemy vessel went dark, Holmes and Celine's connection to the ship abruptly severed. They collapsed to the deck, their bodies still crackling with residual energy. Zhang rushed to their side, calling for medical assistance. Dr. Takahashi and her team burst onto the bridge, medical kits in hand. As they approached Holmes and Celine, their equipment began to malfunction, screens flickering and sensors giving erratic readings. "The energy field is interfering with our gear," Takahashi said, frustration evident in her voice. She reached into her kit, pulling out an old-fashioned stethoscope and other basic diagnostic tools. "We'll have to do this the old-fashioned way." As the medical team worked to stabilize Holmes and Celine, Zhang turned his attention to the disabled enemy fleet. "Security Chief Patel, assemble a team. We're boarding those ships. I want to know who they are and what they're after." Patel nodded crisply. "Aye, Admiral, we'll get to the bottom of this." In engineering, Dr. Hill and her team raced to repair the damage caused by the energy surge. As they worked, they made a startling discovery. "Admiral," Hill's voice came over the comm, a note of awe in her tone. "The ship's systems, they've been fundamentally altered. We're seeing capabilities far beyond the original design specs. Enhanced sensor range, improved energy efficiency. It's like the ship has evolved." Zhang absorbed this information, his mind racing with the implications. "Understood, Doctor. Continue your analysis and keep me updated." In the medical bay, Holmes and Celine regained consciousness, their bodies still surrounded by a shared energy field. Dr. Takahashi hovered over them, her face a mask of concentration as she studied her findings. "Their cellular structure," she murmured more to herself than to her patients. "It's changed again. It's like they've become living preserver technology." Holmes and Celine exchanged a look, their thoughts flowing between them without need for words. They could feel the change in their bodies, the newfound ability to interface directly with advanced systems. Admiral Zhang entered the medical bay, his face grave. "Doctor, what's their status?" Before Takahashi could respond, Holmes spoke up, his voice stronger than expected. "Admiral, we believe we can help unlock more of the Preserver Station's secrets." Celine nodded in agreement. "Our transformation, it's given us a unique connection to the technology." Zhang's eyes narrowed as he considered their words. He turned to Dr. Takahashi, who shook her head firmly. "Admiral, I strongly advise against any further experimentation until we understand the long-term effects of their transformation," she said, her tone brooking no argument. Zhang nodded slowly, weighing the potential benefits against the risks. Before he could respond, the ship's comm system crackled to life. "Admiral, to the bridge," Security Chief Patel's voice rang out. "We've completed our initial sweep of the enemy vessels. You're going to want to see this." Zhang's expression hardened. "On my way." He turned back to Holmes and Celine. "For now, you two rest and recover. We'll discuss our next steps once we have a better understanding of our situation." As the Admiral left the medical bay, Holmes and Celine exchanged another meaningful glance. They could feel the pull of the preserver artifacts stored in the ship's secure hold, calling to them like a siren song. Despite their exhaustion, they knew their journey was nowhere near the end. The true test of their newfound abilities and the consequences of their transformation was yet to come. As they exchanged a meaningful glance, the ship's engines suddenly roared to life, the deck plates vibrating beneath their feet. "All hands, brace for emergency warp," Zhang's voice boomed over the intercom. Holmes and Celine instinctively reached for each other, their hands clasping as the ship lurched into warp. The medical bay's lights flickered, and Dr. Takahashi scrambled to secure loose equipment. "We need to help," Holmes said, his voice strained but determined. Celine nodded, and together they pushed themselves off the medical beds, ignoring Dr. Takahashi's protests. They made their way to the main engineering section, their movements perfectly synchronized despite their weakened state. As they entered engineering, Dr. Hill looked up from her console, her eyes widening at their arrival. "What are you doing here? You should be resting." "We can help," Celine said, her voice echoing Holmes's earlier statement. Without waiting for a response, they moved to the central power distribution node. As their hands touched the console, their bioluminescent patterns flared to life, pulsing in rhythm with the ship's warp core. The effect was immediate. The ship's speed increased dramatically, the stars outside becoming little more than streaks of light. In the bridge, Admiral Zhang watched in astonishment as their velocity climbed well beyond the ship's design limits. "Engineering report," Zhang barked into the comm. Dr. Hill's voice came back, tinged with awe and concern. "Sir, Holmes and Celine are interfacing directly with our systems. They're pushing us beyond anything I thought possible." Zhang's expression hardened. "And the cost?" There was a pause before Dr. Hill responded. "The ship's hull integrity is holding for now, but I'm not sure for how long. As for Holmes and Celine, I can't say, sir. Dr. Takahashi should monitor their condition." In engineering, Holmes and Celine stood motionless, their eyes closed in concentration. Energy crackled around them, arcing between their bodies and the ship's systems. Dr. Takahashi burst into the room, medical tricorder in hand. "Their hybrid physiology is under extreme stress," she reported, her voice tight with worry. "Admiral, if they keep this up, the damage could be permanent." Zhang's eyes sharp as he weighed his options. The pursuing ships were falling behind. But at what cost? He made his decision. "Helm, prepare to drop out of warp. Set course for the nearest uninhabited planet." The ship decelerated, emerging from warp near an icy world. As they entered orbit, Zhang outlined his plan to the senior staff. They would use the planet's harsh terrain to their advantage, setting a trap for their pursuers. The ship descended through turbulent atmosphere, its enhanced systems allowing for a controlled landing on a vast ice field. As soon as they touched down, Zhang sprang into action. "Security Chief Patel, set up perimeter defenses. Dr. Hill, activate our cloaking technology. Everyone else, prepare for imminent contact." Holmes and Celine, their bodies still crackling with residual energy, approached Zhang. "Admiral," Holmes began, his voice hoarse, "we want to help with the defenses." Zhang studied them for a moment, noting their dedication despite their obvious exhaustion. He nodded sharply. "Work with Dr. Hill. She's modifying some preserver artifacts into an EMP weapon. Your unique abilities might be useful." As they moved to join Dr. Hill, the ship's sensors detected the arrival of the pursuing vessels in orbit. Zhang watched grimly as enemy shuttles began to descend, searching for signs of the expedition ship. "Let them come," he muttered, his eyes scanning the icy wasteland outside. "We'll be ready." The expedition team worked feverishly to prepare their trap. Security teams concealed themselves in the icy terrain, while engineering crews fine-tuned the modified preserver artifacts. At the center of it all stood Holmes and Celine, their linked hands pulsing with impossibly strong energy. As the first wave of enemy shuttles appeared on the horizon, Zhang gave the order. "Now!" Holmes and Celine channeled their shared energy into the preserver devices. A massive electromagnetic pulse erupted from the artifacts, rippling across the ice field. The enemy shuttles shuddered mid-flight, their systems overloading before crashing onto the frozen surface. The pulse subsided, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the howling wind. Then chaos erupted as security teams moved to secure the downed vessels and their crews. In the aftermath, Holmes and Celine collapsed, their bodies convulsing from the immense energy expenditure. Dr. Takahashi rushed to their side, her equipment malfunctioning in the residual energy field. "I need to stabilize them," she shouted over the wind. reaching for more primitive medical tools. Their hybrid physiology is in critical condition. As she worked to save Holmes and Celine, Zhang received an urgent communication. The remaining enemy vessels were descending into the atmosphere, preparing for another assault. Zhang surveyed the scene, his ship damaged, his two most powerful assets incapacitated, and an enemy force regrouping for another attack. The icy wind whipped around him as he considered their dwindling options. High Commander Thelos approached, his face grim. "Admiral, our long-range sensors detect more ships approaching. We may be looking at a prolonged siege." Zhang nodded, his mind racing through potential strategies. "Then we'll need to make every second count. Prepare for another wave. We'll use everything we've got." As the expedition team braced for the next assault, the fate of their mission, and possibly the future of human-betazoid relations, hung in the balance. The ice planet's unforgiving landscape seemed to mirror the harsh reality of their situation. Trapped, outnumbered, but far from defeated. Defeated, but far from beaten. Zhang opened his mouth to issue new orders when a violent tremor rocked the icy ground beneath their feet. The admiral stumbled, catching himself on a nearby console as the tremors intensified. "Report!" he barked, struggling to maintain his footing. Dr. Hill's voice crackled over the comm, tinged with urgency. "Admiral, the energy discharge from Holmes and Celine's abilities has triggered a chain reaction in the planet's core. We're detecting massive seismic activity across the entire surface." As if to punctuate her words, a deafening crack split the air. Zhang watched in horror as a massive fissure opened in the ice field, stretching as far as the eye could see. Steam hissed from the widening crevasse, melting the surrounding ice at an alarming rate. "Evacuation Protocol Alpha," Zhang shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "All hands, prepare for immediate departure." The expedition team sprang into action. Dr. Takahashi and her medical staff rushed to secure the unconscious forms of Holmes and Celine onto anti-gravity stretchers. Their bodies still crackled with residual energy, causing the equipment to spark and malfunction. "We need to move them now," Takahashi yelled over the growing rumble of the disintegrating planet. Security Chief Patel and her team herded the captured enemy crew members toward the ship. "Move it!" she barked, her phaser trained on the prisoners. "Consider this your lucky day. You're coming with us." Zhang coordinated the frantic evacuation from the bridge, his eyes darting between the external camera feeds and the ship's sensors. The ice field was rapidly breaking apart, with geysers of superheated steam erupting from the widening fissures. "Engineering status report," he demanded. "We're bypassing damaged systems and rerouting power to engines and shields." Dr. Hill responded, her voice strained. "It's not pretty, but it should get us airborne." High Commander Thelos approached Zhang, his face grim. "Admiral, long-range sensors show the remaining enemy vessels have begun their descent. They're unaware of the planet's condition." Zhang's mind raced, calculating their options. "We can't wait for them to realize their mistake. Helm, prepare for emergency liftoff as soon as the last of our people are aboard." The ship's hull groaned under the stress as the final members of the expedition team scrambled inside. Zhang watched the external feeds as a massive chasm opened beneath them, threatening to swallow the vessel whole. "Now," Zhang roared, "get us out of here!" The enhanced engines roared to life, propelling the ship upward moments before the ice shelf collapsed entirely. As they climbed through the turbulent atmosphere, the planet's surface fractured on a global scale. Entire continents of ice broke apart, revealing the molten core beneath. Zhang gripped the arms of his chair as the ship shuddered violently. "Steady as she goes," he urged the helm officer. "Push her as hard as you can without tearing us apart." As they broke free of the atmosphere, Zhang saw the enemy ships abort their attack run, finally realizing the danger. But their delay had cost them dearly. The expedition ship was already at a higher altitude, using its superior position to evade the now fleeing hostiles. The bridge crew watched in awe as the ice world began to break apart behind them. The release of pent-up geothermal energy caused a chain reaction, turning the once frozen planet into a roiling ball of fire and steam. The cataclysm created a massive debris field, forcing both the expedition ship and the enemy vessels to navigate a treacherous path to open space. "Helm, plot a course away from the debris field," Zhang ordered. "Push our systems to the limit. We need to put as much distance between us and those ships as possible. As the ship accelerated away from the destruction, Jung received an urgent communication from Dr. Takahashi in the medical bay. Admiral, Holmes and Celine's condition remains critical, she reported, her voice tight with concern. Their hybrid physiology is in a state of flux. The bioluminescent patterns on their skin are shifting. I think we might be seeing another stage in their transformation. Chang's brow furrowed. Do what you can for them, Doctor. We may need their abilities sooner rather than later. As the immediate danger passed, Zhang called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. They gathered in the conference room, the tension palpable as they considered their next move. Options, Zhang said simply, his gaze sweeping across the assembled officers. Dr. Hill spoke up first. Sir, I've been analyzing the data from the Preserver artifacts. I believe that with Holmes and Celine's unique abilities, we might be able to activate a hidden Preserver network. It could provide safe passage and advanced defensive capabilities. But that relies on them regaining consciousness, Takahashi interjected, and being willing to risk further physiological changes. Before Zhang could respond, the ship's sensors blared an alert. High Commander Thalos rushed to a nearby console, his eyes widening as he read the display. Admiral, he said, his voice taut, long-range sensors are detecting a new group of ships approaching from Betazoid space. Initial scans suggest a mix of human and Betazoid vessel designs. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Zhang's mind raced, weighing their dwindling options against the potential risk and rewards of each course of action. Reinforcements? Security Chief Patel asked, breaking the silence. Or a new threat, Zhang replied grimly. We can't be certain of their intentions. As the senior staff debated their next move, Zhang stood at the viewport, watching the stars streak by. The damaged ship continued its evasive maneuvers through space, its crew working frantically to effect repairs while maintaining their lead over the pursuing enemy vessels. The fate of the expedition, the Preserver technology, and the unconscious Holmes and Celine hung in the balance. Zhang knew that his next decision would be crucial, potentially reshaping the political landscape of the entire sector. He turned back to his officers, his expression resolute. Here's what we're going to do. Do, Zhang said, his voice calm despite the tension in the room. First, we need to... A sudden alarm blared through the ship, cutting off the Admiral's words. Dr. Takahashi's voice crackled over the intercom, urgency evident in her tone. Admiral, you need to get down here immediately. It's Holmes and Celine. Zhang exchanged a quick glance with his senior staff before rushing out of the conference room, the others close on his heels. They arrived at the medical bay to find it bathed in an otherworldly glow. Holmes and Celine lay on adjacent beds, their bodies radiating an intense bioluminescence. The patterns on their skin pulsed in perfect synchronization, casting shifting shadows across the walls. As Zhang approached, both patients' eyes snapped open simultaneously, filled with an eerie, knowing light. Dr. Takahashi hurried over, her medical scanner whirring. Their vitals have stabilized, she reported, disbelief coloring her voice. In fact, they're better than ever. It's as if their bodies have undergone a complete regeneration. Holmes sat up, his movements fluid and precise. Admiral, he said, his voice resonating with newfound strength, we need to get to the bridge. Celine nodded in agreement, already swinging her legs over the side of the bed. There's something we need to show you. Dr. Takahashi stepped forward, her face creased with concern. I must protest. They need further observation and... Zhang held up a hand, silencing her. He studied Holmes and Celine for a long moment, noting the determined set of their jaws and the strange clarity in their eyes. Very well, he said finally, but at the first sign of trouble, you're back here. Understood? The pair nodded in unison, then made their way to the bridge with Zhang and the senior staff close behind. As they entered, the ship shuddered, a reminder of their precarious situation. Without hesitation, Holmes and Celine approached the main control console. They placed their hands on the interface, their skin pulsing with light. The effect was immediate and startling. Displays flickered to life across the bridge, systems long damaged by their harried escape suddenly coming back online. The ship's power levels surged, stabilizing at a higher output than they'd seen since leaving Earth. Incredible, Dr. Hill breathed, her eyes wide as she watched the readouts. They're interfacing directly with the ship's systems, bypassing damaged circuitry and optimizing power distribution. Holmes turned to Zhang, his eyes glowing with an inner light. Admiral, we've detected something. A preserver defense network hidden in this sector. Celine nodded, her fingers dancing across the console. We can guide you to it. It's our best chance for survival. Zhang hesitated only for a moment before nodding to the helmsman. Follow their coordinates. The ship banked sharply, accelerating through space. On the interface, stars blurred into streaks of light as they pushed the engines to their limits. Behind them, sensors showed the pursuing enemy vessels closing the gap. Dirac? There, Holmes and Celine said in unison, pointing to a specific sector of space that appeared empty to the naked eye. As they approached the coordinates, a massive structure shimmered into view. Its design was unmistakably alien, with sweeping curves and intricate patterns that matched those on Holmes and Celine's skin. A preserver space station, High Commander Thalos whispered, awe evident in his voice. The expedition ship glided into the station's protective field, just as the enemy vessels entered weapons range. A pulse of energy erupted from the ancient structure, washing over their pursuers. In an instant, the hostile ships went dark, drifting lifelessly in space. Full stop, Zhang ordered, his voice steady despite the rapid turn of events. Let's take a moment to assess our situation. As the crew worked to gather data on their new surroundings, a new alert sounded from the long-range sensors. A fleet of ships emerged from warp at the edge of the system, their designs a mix of human and betazoid architecture. We're receiving a transmission, Security Chief Patel reported, her hand pressed to her earpiece. It's from the fleet's commander. Zhang nodded, and a moment later, a face appeared on the main view screen. The man wore a uniform that blended elements of both human and betazoid design, his features a clear indication of mixed heritage. This is Admiral Soren of the Joint Human Betazoid Defense Force, he said, his voice carrying authority tempered with curiosity. We detected the energy signatures from your recent incident. We're here to offer assistance and to discuss the situation in person. Zhang straightened, keenly aware of the potential implications of this meeting. We would be glad to receive you, Admiral Soren. Permission to dock is granted. As the bridge crew prepared for the arrival of their unexpected allies, Holmes and Celine approached Zhang, their eyes wide with excitement. Admiral, Holmes said, his voice low and urgent, this station, it's more than just a defensive outpost. Celine nodded, her skin pulsing with light. It's an archive, a vast repository of preserver knowledge and technology. The potential here is staggering. Zhang absorbed this information, his mind racing with the possibilities and potential consequences. He was about to respond when Holmes and Celine suddenly stiffened, their bioluminescent patterns shifting into new, more complex configurations. We need to explore deeper into the station, Celine said, her voice taking on an almost trance-like quality. There are answers here, about our transformation, about the preservers themselves. Zhang considered for a moment, then nodded decisively. Assemble an exploration team. Dr. Hill, you'll lead the scientific analysis. Chief Patel, you're on security detail. Commander Thalos, I want you there to provide a betazoid perspective. As the team gathered their equipment, Zhang turned his attention back to the approaching shuttle carrying Admiral Soren and his delegation. The next few hours would be crucial, potentially reshaping the political landscape of the entire sector. The air on the command deck crackled with tension and anticipation as Admiral Soren's shuttle docked with the ancient preserver station. Zhang stood at the center of it all, keenly aware that the decisions made here could alter the course of human and betazoid history. As the airlock cycled open, Zhang squared his shoulders, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fate of two civilizations, the secrets of an ancient race, and the future of Holmes and Celine all hung in the balance as they stood on the threshold of a new era in interstellar relations. The fate of two civilizations, the secrets of an ancient race, and the future of Holmes and Celine all hung in the balance as they stood on the threshold of a new era in interstellar exploration. As Admiral Soren and his delegation made their way onto the command deck, Zhang noticed a sudden change in Holmes and Celine. Their bioluminescent patterns intensified, forming intricate symbols that matched those found throughout the preserver station. The pair's eyes widened, and they exchanged a meaningful glance. "Admiral," Holmes said, his voice tight with urgency, "we need to explore deeper into the station. Now." Zhang nodded, quickly assessing the situation. "Understood. We'll form an exploration team immediately." He turned to his senior staff. "Dr. Hill, you'll lead the scientific analysis. Chief Patel, you're on security detail. Commander Thelos, I want your Betazoid perspective on this." As the team gathered their equipment, Zhang approached Admiral Soren. "I apologize for the abrupt change in plans, but we've encountered a significant development. Would you care to join us?" Soren's eyes gleamed with interest. "Of course. I wouldn't miss this for anything." The exploration team made their way into the heart of the preserver station, led by Holmes and Celine. The pair moved with an uncanny grace, their bodies emitting a soft glow that illuminated the darkened corridors. As they progressed, hidden passageways and control panels revealed themselves, responding to the pulsing light emanating from Holmes and Celine. Dr. Hill's eyes widened as they entered a vast chamber filled with sealed containers. "Incredible," she breathed, running her scanner over the nearest object. These appeared to be data storage devices of some kind. The amount of information here could be staggering. Security Chief Patel kept a watchful eye on their surroundings, her hand never far from her weapon. "Let's not get too excited. We don't know what kind of security measures the preservers might have left behind." As they moved deeper into the station, Holmes and Celine's connection to the ancient technology grew stronger. They approached a series of consoles, their hands hovering over the controls. Suddenly, holographic displays sprang to life, filling the air with star maps and schematics for advanced propulsion systems. Dr. Hill worked feverishly to document everything, her fingers flying over her datapad. "This is revolutionary," she muttered. "The applications of this technology could change everything we know about space travel." High Commander Thelos closed his eyes, reaching out with his Betazoid senses. "There's something more," he said softly. "A presence. It's faint, but it's growing stronger." As they reached the central core of the station, Holmes and Celine's physiological changes accelerated. Their skin took on a metallic sheen, and their bioluminescent patterns formed complex shifting circuits. At the center of the chamber stood a large pulsating crystal structure. "Wait," Chief Patel called out, but it was too late. Holmes and Celine moved towards the crystal with inhuman speed, their hands reaching out to touch its surface. The moment they made contact, a surge of energy coursed through their bodies and into the station systems. The entire structure hummed to life, dormant systems activating in a cascading wave of power. Holographic displays filled the chamber, projecting vast amounts of data and intricate schematics. The exploration team watched in awe as Holmes and Celine appeared to merge with the crystal structure, their bodies becoming translucent and suffused with pulsating energy. Dr. Hill's instruments began beeping frantically. "We're detecting a massive power buildup," she shouted over the growing hum. "We need to evacuate immediately." The team rushed towards the exit, but Holmes and Celine remained fused with the crystal, seemingly unaware of the danger. As they reached the outer chambers, a blinding flash of light erupted from the central core. When the light faded, Holmes and Celine were gone. Panic erupted among the team. Dr. Hill frantically scanned the area, her face pale with shock. "I'm not detecting any life signs," she reported, her voice shaking. "But there's a residual energy signature. I've never seen anything like it." Security Chief Patel immediately secured the perimeter, her training kicking in despite the unprecedented situation. "We need to lock down this entire section," she ordered. "No one in or out until we know what we're dealing with." High Commander Thelos pressed his fingers to his temples, his face contorted in concentration. "I can't sense them," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "The preserver energy. It's overwhelming my abilities." Admiral Zhang's voice crackled over their communicators. "Report. What's happening down there?" Dr. Hill took a deep breath before responding. "Admiral, we've lost Holmes and Celine. They've disappeared into some kind of preserver energy matrix. We're initiating emergency protocols now. As the team regrouped and began their search efforts, the preserver station continued to evolve around them. Previously hidden chambers opened, revealing caches of advanced technology and biological samples. The air was thick with tension as human and Betazoid crew members worked side by side, acutely aware of the potential implications of their discoveries. Hours passed with no sign of Holmes and Celine. The combined forces of the expedition crew and Admiral Soren's fleet combed every inch of the station, but to no avail. As frustration mounted, whispers began to circulate about the true nature of the preserver technology and the potential consequences of their actions. Suddenly, a new alert sounded from Dr. Hill's instruments. "Admiral," she called out, her eyes wide with excitement and trepidation. "We're detecting a subspace signal emanating from the station's core. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before." As the scientific team scrambled to decipher the mysterious transmission, hope began to rise. Perhaps hidden within this complex stream of data lay the key to unraveling the mystery of Holmes and Celine's disappearance and the true purpose of their incredible transformation. And the true purpose of their incredible journey. As the scientific teams worked feverishly to decipher the subspace signal, a sudden power surge rippled through the ancient structure. The holographic displays flickered and stabilized, revealing a new set of coordinates deep within an unexplored sector of space. Admiral Zhang's eyes narrowed as he studied the newly revealed information. "Dr. Hill, what do you make of this?" The scientist's fingers flew over her console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It appears to be a set of coordinates, sir. They're unlike any we've seen before, utilizing a unique spatial reference system." Admiral Soren stepped forward, his expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Could this be related to the disappearance of your crew members?" Zhang nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. "It's our best lead so far. We need to investigate immediately." The two admirals quickly convened a meeting with their senior staff, outlining a plan for an immediate expedition to the newly revealed coordinates. The joint human Betazoid task force moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for the journey ahead. Dr. Hill and her team worked tirelessly to integrate the newly acquired preserver data into the expedition ship's systems. The vessel's engines hummed with newfound power, its sensors reaching further into the cosmos than ever before. As the final preparations were underway, Chief Engineer Rodriguez approached Zhang with a concerned look. "Admiral, we've detected an anomaly in the preserver station's crystal structure. It's pulsating with increasing intensity." Zhang frowned, turning to Dr. Hill for explanation. She consulted her instruments, her eyes widening in realization. "The energy signature, it matches the residual traces left behind by Holmes and Celine's disappearance. I believe they may have been transported to the location indicated by these new coordinates." With this new information, the sense of urgency among the crew intensified. Zhang issued his final orders, leaving behind a joint human Betazoid research team to continue studying the ancient technology. He took personal command of the mission, with High Commander Thelos serving as his second in command. The expedition ship disengaged from the preserver station, its enhanced engines pushing it to speeds previously thought impossible. As they traversed the vast emptiness of space, the crew marveled at the ship's newfound capabilities. Ensign Chen, monitoring the navigation systems, called out suddenly, "Sir, we're detecting unusual spatial distortions ahead." Zhang leaned forward in his chair, studying the sensor readouts. The distortions appeared as swirling eddies in the fabric of spacetime, remnants of a massive energy wave that had swept through the sector. Dr. Hill's voice crackled over the comm system. "Admiral, these distortions are likely connected to Holmes and Celine's transformation. The energy signatures are consistent with the preserver technology we observed during their change." As the ship navigated through the distorted space, the crew experienced a series of unsettling equipment malfunctions. Lights flickered, consoles sparked, and the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. "Engineering to bridge," Rodriguez's voice came through, strained but determined. "We're doing our best to compensate, but these distortions are playing havoc with our systems. The preserver tech is helping, but we're pushing it to the limit. John gripped the arms of his chair as the ship shuddered violently. Steady as she goes, helmsman. Dr. Hill, any progress on those coordinates? We're close, Admiral, Hill replied. The distortions are actually clearing as we approach our destination. I think we're... Her words were cut off as the ship emerged from the distorted space, revealing a sight that left the entire bridge crew speechless. Before them stretched a massive nebula, its swirling gases emitting a soft bioluminescence that mirrored the patterns they had observed on Holmes and Celine's skin. Incredible, Thalos whispered, his betazoid senses overwhelmed by the cosmic display. Dr. Hill's voice was filled with excitement as she reported her findings. Admiral, scans are showing a dense concentration of exotic particles and energy signatures consistent with advanced preserver technology. And there's more. Sensors are detecting a solid structure at the heart of the nebula. Zhang nodded, his expression resolute. Take us in, helmsman. Shields at maximum. As the ship cautiously approached the hidden structure, their communications array crackled to life. A jumbled signal pushed through the interference, resolving into fragmented data packets. Communications Officer Liang worked frantically to assemble the message, her eyes widening as she deciphered its contents. Sir, it's from Holmes and Celine. They're requesting immediate assistance and providing instructions for safe approach. Zhang studied the message, noting the curious mixture of human and betazoid languages interspersed with preserver symbols. Follow those instructions to the letter, helmsman. Let's bring our people home. The expedition ship began its perilous journey through the nebula, navigating a treacherous path of gravimetric eddies in radiation pockets. Hours passed as they inched closer to their goal, the ship's structural integrity constantly tested by the harsh environment. Finally, they broke through the last layer of the nebula, and a collective gasp rose from the bridge crew. A massive space station floated serenely at the nebula's core, its design a breathtaking fusion of human, betazoid, and preserver architecture. As they approached, a docking bay opened, emitting a tractor beam that gently guided their vessel to a secure berth. The station's artificial gravity and life support systems engaged, creating a habitable environment for the crew. Zhang stood, his posture straight and determined. Assemble an away team. Dr. Hill, Security Chief Patel, High Commander Thalos, you're with me. Let's find out what's waiting for us on that station. As the away team prepared to disembark, the ship's sensors detected two life signs approaching the docking bay. The signals matched Holmes and Celine's biorhythms, but with significant alterations that hinted at further physiological changes. The team stepped onto the station's deck, their boots echoing in the cavernous space. The interior was a seamless blend of organic and technological elements, surfaces pulsing with energy and responding to their presence. They moved cautiously towards the approaching life signs, each step bringing them closer to answers, and to a reunion long awaited. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with the transformed Holmes and Celine. The pair stood before them, their bodies now a perfect synthesis of human, betazoid, and preserver physiologies. Their skin shimmered with intricate bioluminescent patterns, and their eyes glowed with an otherworldly intelligence. For a moment, no one spoke. The air crackled with potential, the weight of this encounter heavy on all present. Then Holmes stepped forward, his voice resonating with newfound power and knowledge. Welcome, he said, his words carrying layers of meaning beyond mere sound. We have much to show you. You! Holmes extended his hand, the gesture both familiar and alien. As Zhang reached out to shake it, he felt a tingling sensation coursing through his arm, a tangible connection to the immense power now coursing through his former crew member. Celine stepped forward, her movements fluid and graceful. We understand you have questions, she said, her voice a harmonious blend of tones that seemed to resonate on multiple levels. Please follow us. There is much to show you. The away team exchanged glances, a mixture of awe and trepidation evident on their faces. Zhang nodded, and they fell in step behind the transformed pair. As they moved through the station's winding corridors, Dr. Hill's scientific curiosity overrode her initial shock. She scanned everything in sight with her tricorder, muttering excitedly under her breath. The integration of organic and technological components is unlike anything I've ever seen, she whispered to Zhang. It's as if the entire station is alive. Security Chief Patel remained vigilant, her eyes darting from one unfamiliar sight to another. The walls pulsed with energy, and occasionally sections would shift and reconfigure themselves as they passed. Sir, she said quietly to Zhang, I'm not detecting any obvious weapon systems, but this entire structure could be a weapon itself. High Commander Thalos walked with his eyes half closed, his betazoid senses stretched to their limit. I can feel echoes, he said, his voice strained. Fragments of thoughts, emotions, knowledge. It's overwhelming. As they entered a vast chamber filled with holographic displays, Dr. Hill gasped. Complex schematics and data streams flickered into existence, responding to Holmes and Seleni's mere presence. This technology, Hill breathed, it's decades, maybe centuries beyond anything we have. Holmes turned to the group, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly intelligence. What you see here is only the beginning, he said. The preservers left behind more than just artifacts. They left a legacy, a path for evolution. Selene nodded, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in sync with the chamber's energy field. We have been transformed, yes, but we are still ourselves. We are the bridge between what humanity is and what it can become. As if to demonstrate, Holmes and Selene's bodies began to phase in and out of normal space-time. The away team instinctively stepped back, watching in awe as the pair manipulated the very fabric of reality around them. Incredible, Zhang murmured, his composure slipping for a moment in the face of such a display. The group continued deeper into the station, passing through rooms filled with technology that defied explanation. In one chamber, Dr. Hill observed what appeared to be a biological replication system, creating complex organic compounds from raw energy. In another, Patel noted a series of devices that seemed capable of manipulating gravity and space-time on a localized scale. Finally, they arrived at the heart of the station. A colossal crystal structure dominated the central chamber, pulsing with energy that made the air itself feel charged. Holmes and Selene approached it, their bioluminescent patterns intensifying as they drew near. This, Holmes said, gesturing to the crystal, is the key to everything. The sum of preserver knowledge, the catalyst for our transformation, and the gateway to possibilities beyond imagination. As Holmes and Selene made contact with the crystal, a surge of energy coursed through the entire station. The away team stumbled, steadying themselves against the walls as the floor vibrated beneath their feet. A massive holographic display materialized, filling the chamber with images of star systems, energy matrices, and equations of staggering complexity. Dr. Hill's tricorder beeped frantically, its storage capacity overwhelmed by the influx of data. Admiral, she called out, her voice a mix of excitement and concern. The ship's computers are receiving a massive data transmission. It's more information than we've gathered in decades of exploration. Zhang opened his mouth to respond, but was cut off by a piercing alarm. The holographic display shifted, showing multiple vessels approaching the nebula at high speed. Security Chief Patel's fingers flew over her tactical display. Sir, confirmed visual on multiple hostile vessels. They match the signatures of the forces we encountered earlier. Holmes and Selene exchanged a look, their expressions grave. They've tracked the energy signature, Selene said. We need to activate the station's defenses immediately. With a series of gestures and projected thoughts, Holmes and Selene guided Zhang and Thalos to a nearby control interface. Place your hands here, Holmes instructed. Your combined human and betazoid physiologies are necessary to initialize the defense protocols. As Zhang and Thalos complied, the station hummed to life around them. Energy shields sprang into existence, enveloping both the station and the expedition ship. Weapon systems, previously hidden, emerged from the station's structure, targeting the incoming hostile fleet. The nebula itself seemed to respond to the station's commands, swirling and condensing to create gravimetric distortions that hampered the enemy's approach. Holmes and Selene moved in perfect synchronization, their bodies becoming conduits for the station's incredible power. Beams of energy lanced out from the station, striking the hostile vessels with pinpoint accuracy. The enemy fleet, caught off guard by the station's advanced defenses, began to break formation. As the battle raged, Dr. Hill noticed a concerning reading on her tricorder. "Admiral," she called out, her voice urgent, "the crystal structure is accumulating a dangerous level of energy. If it continues at this rate, we could be looking at a catastrophic overload." Holmes and Celine, seemingly aware of the danger, began a complex series of interactions with the crystal. Their movements were a blur, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing rapidly as they worked to stabilize the energy output. The hostile fleet, realizing the futility of a direct assault, changed tactics. They concentrated their firepower on a specific section of the nebula, attempting to trigger a chain reaction that could destabilize the entire region. The effects were immediate. The nebula churned violently, its once beautiful swirls of gas now a maelstrom of cosmic fury. The station shuddered under the strain, and even the advanced shielding of the expedition ship began to fluctuate. Zhang surveyed the chaos unfolding around them, his mind racing through possible solutions. With a heavy heart, he realized there was only one course of action. "We need to evacuate," he announced, his voice cutting through the din of alarms and energy discharges. "Dr. Hill, Chief Patel, Commander Thalos, prepare to return to the ship." Holmes turned to Zhang, his expression solemn. "We cannot leave yet, he said. "Celine and I must remain to prevent the station's destruction and contain the nebula's instability. Our transformation has made us uniquely capable of interfacing with this technology." Zhang hesitated, torn between his duty to his crew and his desire not to abandon Holmes and Celine. But as another violent tremor shook the station, he knew there was no time for debate. "Understood," he said, locking eyes with Holmes. "Good luck and Godspeed." As the away team hurried back towards the docking bay, the station's internal structure began to shift around them. Entire sections sealed off or changed position, creating a labyrinth of ever-changing corridors. Security Chief Patel took point, her tactical training kicking in as she navigated the team through the evolving layout. "This way," she called out, guiding them through a narrow passage that had just appeared. "The ship's beacon is getting stronger." They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a dead end. Patel cursed under her breath, quickly scanning for alternatives. "Back the way we came," she ordered. "We'll try the left fork this time." As they retraced their steps, Dr. Hill's tricorder beeped insistently. "The energy levels are still climbing," she reported, her voice tight with worry. "Whatever Holmes and Celine are doing, I hope they do it fast." High Commander Thalos stumbled, overwhelmed by the psychic noise permeating the station. Zhang caught him, supporting the Betazoid as they continued their frantic journey. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of twists and turns, they emerged into the docking bay. The expedition ship waited, its engines already humming, in preparation for departure. "Everyone aboard now," Zhang ordered, ushering his team into the airlock. As the doors sealed behind them, he turned to the bridge crew. "Disengage docking clamps and prepare for immediate departure." The ship shuddered as it disconnected from the station, immediately buffeted by the turbulent energies of the destabilized nebula. On the screen, they could see the massive station beginning to phase in and out of normal spacetime. Holmes and Celine's incredible powers at work. As they navigated through the treacherous clouds of energized gas, the hostile fleet came into view. Their weapons seemed to pass harmlessly through the phasing station, leaving them vulnerable to counterattack. Beams of concentrated energy lanced out from the station, striking the enemy vessels with unerring accuracy. One by one, the hostile ships went dark, their systems overwhelmed by the advanced preserver technology. Just as the expedition ship cleared the outer edges of the nebula, there was a brilliant flash of light from behind them. When it faded, the station, along with Holmes and Celine, had vanished. "Sensors detecting a faint subspace signal from the station's last known position," the science officer reported. "It's unlike anything we've ever recorded." Zhang stared at the empty space where the station had been, his mind turning from the events of the past few hours. "Maintain position here," he ordered. "Continue scanning for any sign of the station or any communication from Holmes and Celine. As the crew settled into their monitoring routine, Zhang retreated to his ready room. He had reports to file, explanations to prepare. Somehow he had to convey the magnitude of what they had witnessed to both Earth and Beta Z Prime. He sat at his desk, fingers poised over the computer interface, and took a deep breath. The events of this mission would change everything. Their understanding of the universe, the future of human and Betazoid cooperation, and the very nature of their existence in the cosmos. As Zhang began to compose his report, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was not the end of their encounter with Holmes, Selene, and the incredible preserver technology. Somewhere out there, beyond the limits of their current understanding, a new chapter in the story of their species was just beginning to unfold. As days passed, the ship maintained its position near the nebula's edge, a silent sentinel in the vast expanse of space. Admiral Zhang found himself spending long hours on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the swirling gases where the preserver station had vanished. The rest of the crew worked tirelessly, analyzing the wealth of data they had gathered during their brief encounter with Holmes and Celine. Dr. Hill's voice broke through the quiet hum of the bridge. "Admiral, I'm detecting periodic energy fluctuations in the area where the station disappeared. They're faint, but definitely there." Zhang leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Can you determine the source?" "Not precisely, sir," Hill replied, her fingers dancing over her console. "But the energy signature is consistent with what we observed during the station's phasing event. For 5 days they watched and waited, recording each fluctuation, each ripple in the fabric of space-time. The crew's anticipation grew with each passing hour, the air thick with unspoken questions about what might emerge from the nebula's depths. On the 5th day, alarms blared across the ship. The nebula erupted in a brilliant display of light and energy, forcing the bridge crew to shield their eyes. As the glare subsided, gasps of awe filled the air. Where once there was empty space, the preserver station had reappeared. But it was changed, its structure now seamlessly integrated with the surrounding nebula. Tendrils of gas and energy flowed through and around it, creating a mesmerizing dance of matter and void. Before Zhang could issue any orders, a familiar voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "Admiral Zhang, this is Holmes. We invite you and a small team to return to the station. There is much to discuss." Chuck exchanged glances with his senior staff, a mix of excitement and apprehension evident on their faces. "Prepare and away, team," he ordered. "We're going back." As they approached the station in a shuttle, the changes became even more apparent. The once rigid structure now seemed to pulse with life, its surfaces shifting and adapting as if in response to their presence. They docked and entered, finding the interior dramatically altered. Gone were the stark, technological corridors. In their place was an environment that defied easy description, a seamless blend of organic and technological elements that seemed to react to their very thoughts. Holmes and Celine appeared before them, their forms shimmering with an ethereal energy that bent the very light around them. Zhang found himself at a loss for words, struck by the profound transformation of his former crew members. "Welcome back, Admiral," Holmes said, his voice resonating on multiple levels. "We have much to share with you." Celine gestured, and the environment around them shifted, forming a comfortable space for discussion. "Our journey through other dimensions has given us insights beyond imagination," she explained. "We've come to understand the true nature of the preservers and our place in the cosmic tapestry." Over the next few hours, Holmes and Celine revealed the truth about the preservers. Not a single ancient race, but a collective of advanced civilizations that had achieved symbiosis with their technology. They spoke of the potential for humanity and the Betazoids to follow a similar path, to unlock the full potential of both their biological and technological evolution. Zhang listened, his pupils dilating from the implications. "This is overwhelming," he admitted. "The changes you're suggesting, they would alter the very fabric of our societies." Holmes nodded, understanding etched on his ethereal features. "We propose a gradual process, Admiral, a carefully monitored, voluntary program of integration that respects the unique cultural identities of both humans and Betazoids." High Commander Thelos, who had been silent until now, spoke up. The potential benefits are immense, but so are the risks. How can we ensure this power isn't misused? Celine stepped forward, her form rippling with waves of bioluminescence. We will guide you. Holmes and I have decided to remain here as guardians of this knowledge and facilitators of your advancement. Zhang's brow furrowed. You won't be returning with us. Not physically, Holmes clarified, but our transformation has granted us the ability to project aspects of ourselves across vast distances. We will maintain a presence on both Earth and Beta Z Prime to assist in the integration process. As a demonstration of their newfound abilities and a gesture of trust, Holmes and Celine set about upgrading the expedition ship with advanced preserver technology. The away team watched in amazement as the ship's systems were enhanced beyond anything they had thought possible. We're also providing you with a comprehensive database of preserver knowledge, Celine explained. It should be studied and implemented gradually by joint human betazoid research teams. As the away team prepared to depart, emotions ran high. They were leaving Holmes and Celine behind, yet the transformed pair would, in a sense, be coming with them. Before you go, Holmes said, we have one last gift. With a gesture, a shimmering portal appeared near the station, a stable wormhole leading directly back to the heart of human betazoid space. Zhang stared at the wormhole, then back at Holmes and Celine. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion, for everything. As the expedition ship entered the wormhole, the crew watched in awe as a shimmering energy construct resembling Holmes and Celine appeared on the bridge. It was a final reminder of the incredible journey they had undertaken and the profound changes that awaited their civilizations. The ship emerged near Earth's solar system, marking the beginning of a new era in human and betazoid relations. As Zhang prepared to make his report, he knew that the true impact of their discovery was only just beginning to unfold.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.